in the direction of Moldova and Romania on the missile incident happened in the sky of Moldova and approaching to Romanian borders. But any way, you know, then Russian missiles approaching to the NATO airspace, this is some kind of testing of the air defense of NATO. Do you see that like some kind of warning from Russian side? And another part of the question, do you see any threats to the supply routes NATO and NATO countries delivering military support to Ukraine? Thank you.
Wars are dangerous. Dangerous things happen every day. And of course it's also dangerous because incidents and accidents may happen. And that's exactly why we are so vigilant in NATO to prevent any escalation beyond Ukraine. And that's also why we actually, before the invasion, during last fall, or the fall of 2021, we increased our military presence in the eastern part of the alliance, also in the Black Sea region. And also on the day of the invasion, we met here in the NATO headquarters, we invoked NATO's defense plans, and we decided to further increase our military presence in the eastern part of the alliance with air, naval and land capabilities. We did that partly to be able to monitor, to protect, to ensure no escalation beyond Ukraine, and also to be able to manage incidents or accidents that may occur when there is a full-fledged war going on in our neighborhood in Ukraine. But of course, this military presence of NATO troops, NATO forces in Poland, in Romania, in Slovakia, in other countries in the eastern part of the alliance, also protects the space for NATO allies to support Ukraine. And that makes it even more important that we have increased our presence in the eastern part of the alliance. NATO is not party to the conflict, but we support Ukraine. We support Ukraine in upholding the right for self-defense, and that is a right which is enshrined in the UN Charter, and we have the right to support Ukraine.
Frankfurt Allgemeine.
Thank you very much. Thomas Kutschka, Frankfurt Allgemeine Zeitung. Secretary General, after President Zelensky's visit to Brussels last week, there's clearly a reinvigorated debate now about building a coalition that could send fighter airplanes to Ukraine. When this debate started almost a year ago, you were quite concerned, and you said that NATO would not be sending airplanes because it would not be interfering into the war. So my question today is, do you still share these concerns that it might be seen as an interference? And if not, how would a coalition have to be built? What would be the requirements to make this really work? Thank you.
So first, I think we need to distinguish between two things. One thing is what was discussed very much last year, and that was the issue of whether NATO should establish a no-fly zone over Ukraine and send in NATO planes to enforce a no-fly zone. That's a very different thing than what is discussed now, and that is the possibility of NATO allies deliver aircraft to Ukraine so they can use themselves. That's two very, very different things. Because if NATO was going to send NATO planes to enforce with a NATO presence in the airspace of Ukraine, a no-fly zone, that would be direct NATO involvement. It's a very different thing to provide the Ukrainians with different types of military capabilities that will not make us party to the conflict. Of course, the support to Ukraine has evolved as the war has evolved. In the beginning, there was an enormous focus on javelins, on anti-tank, light anti-tank weapons. And then we saw the urgent need for artillery, and allies started to step up the delivery of also advanced modern artillery. And then air defense has been a main focus, and now heavy weaponry, Striker Bradleys, infantry fighting vehicles, mortars from Germany, and then also main battle tanks. And there's a constant consultation process within the alliance on what types of weapon systems we should deliver. And as you have seen from the media, there is now a discussion going on also on the question of aircraft. And I expect that also to be addressed tomorrow at the meetings here in Brussels. But let me add two things, and that is that one is speed, urgency, because whatever the opinion may be about aircraft, that will take time. What is needed now is urgent support for Ukraine. So my top priority is to ensure that the pledges allies have made for infantry fighting vehicles, for armor, for battle tanks, that they are delivered as soon as possible, because every day counts. The other thing is that, yes, it is important to have a constant consultation among allies on what new platforms we should provide. And of course, this is evolving. But in addition to discussing new platforms, we need to be extremely focused on ensuring that the platforms we have already delivered are working as they should. Just ensure that the air defense systems we have delivered, the artillery we have delivered, has the ammunition, has the spare parts, has the maintenance, has the logistics, has all the sustainment they need to function, is an enormous logistical task that requires an enormous amount of deliveries every day. So yes, of course, it is important to discuss new systems, but the most urgent need is to ensure that all the systems which are already there or are already been pledged are delivered and work as they should.
NTV.
Secretary General Solomon from NTV Turkey. Of course, the issue is the earthquake in Turkey. After the devastating earthquake, Turkey requested the assistance of EADRCC, and EADRCC moved rather quickly. They have decided to deploy shelters in Turkey. So my question is, when these will be operational in Turkey? And apparently the list of what Turkey needs is rather very long, because it's really devastating. And to that end, what is the additional support you might be in a situation to send to Turkey? And there's also the question of the security, the raising security concern from the southern flank between Syria and Turkey. And to that end, is there anything that NATO could do in order to deliver fully this tailored assured measures to Turkey? Thank you.
As you said, Turkey asked for help through our Euro-Atlantic disaster response mechanism very early, and hours after earthquake, we sent out a call to all allies and partners to provide support and help to Ukraine, to Turkey after the earthquake, and that's exactly what allies have done, bilaterally, partly through NATO, and of course also through the European Union and in different ways. And I welcome all those efforts. That's something which is extremely important, and NATO will deliver shelters. We will do that as soon as possible. I'm not able to give you an exact date, but allies and NATO are working hard to deliver as much support as quickly as possible. NATO has also provided some transportation, and I think it's important both to make sure that we get support quickly, but also to ensure that we actually are able to stay, because this earthquake will have consequences for a long time, and therefore Turkey and the people in the region will need support for a long time. Let me just reiterate my condolences, which I also have expressed directly to President Erdogan, for the loss of lives and the devastating consequences of the earthquake we have seen in Turkey and Syria.
Associated Press.
The Associated Press. The war is coming up to virtually its 1-year marker, and I wonder if if you have any thoughts on how that's changed NATO and in particular your job, and is this a job that you want to keep doing as we come into the next summit in Vilnius?
In one way, it has not changed NATO. It has just demonstrated the importance of NATO. And how important it has been that actually since 2014, NATO has implemented the biggest reinforcement of collective defense in a generation. Because the war didn't start in February last year, it started in 2014. And that triggered a big adaptation of our alliance, with high readiness of our forces, with more presence in the eastern part of the alliance, with more exercises, and also for the first time in many, many years, all allies started to increase defense spending. So fundamentally, it hasn't changed NATO. It has only demonstrated the importance of allies standing together, both in providing support to Ukraine, but also in protecting each other, ensuring that the war doesn't escalate beyond Ukraine. And when we decided the morning of the invasion to increase our presence, then we were able to build on the increased presence we have already implemented over the last years. We decided the battle groups in 2016, and we actually increased our presence also in the months ahead of the invasion, because the invasion was no surprise. This was an invasion we knew was coming, and therefore we were prepared when it happened. Yeah, for me it is extremely important to focus on my task as Secretary General in a demanding and challenging time for the Alliance, and that's what I have to say about that.
We'll go to ZDF.
Thank you very much. Florian Neuhan from ZDF German TV. Mr. Stoltenberg, just a quick follow-up on the question with regard to fighter jets. Do I understand you correctly that you do not rule out those the delivery of fighter jets? Because there are some member states, especially the German Chancellor, who said that this is no-go due to the risk of escalation. And a second question, I'm sure you're aware of the concept that your predecessor, Anders Fogh Rasmussen, has developed for Ukraine. He spoke of, and he promotes the idea of security guarantees for Ukraine in the midterm as an alternative to NATO membership. What do you think of this? Do you think this is realistic and a possibility to secure the future of Ukraine?
Yes, it is important. Yes, it is possible, of course, to secure the future of Ukraine. The first thing we need to do then is to help them to win this war. And that's exactly the main focus of everything we do, is to ensure sufficient supplies of everything from heavy armor to drones, to fuel and non-military support in all forms and shapes. So that's exactly what we do. So that's precondition number one. The second main focus should be that when this war ends in one way or another, we should ensure that Ukraine is able to deter and defend itself. Because what we saw after 2014 is that Ukraine was not in a position to deter a second attack. Russia went in and illegally annexed Crimea, and then a few weeks or months after, they went into eastern Donbass. And then we had the war going up and down for many years until the full-fledged invasion. What we need now is that we are able to strengthen Ukraine with support, with training, and NATO also looks into the more long-term transformation of or transition of the Ukrainian armed forces from Soviet-era doctrines and equipment, which is still a very important part of their armed forces, to modern NATO capabilities interoperable with NATO allies, so Ukraine can be in position to deter any further aggression. That's perhaps the most important thing to secure Ukraine in the future, and that is to enable them to have an even stronger armed forces after some kind of peace arrangement that may be agreed at the end of the war in Ukraine to prevent a third big attack on Ukraine after 2014, after what happened last year, and then a potential new one. So that's the second thing, is to ensure that we work with Ukraine on long-term reforms, long-term interoperability, long-term transition to NATO standards, and help them to build up their armed forces even more. And then the third issue will be the issue of whether there will be some international arrangements, agreements, assurances. Well, that may be part of some kind of negotiated solution where our allies also participate. I'm careful speculating exactly how they will be formulated and what kind of framework they will be issued. But I'm saying that, of course, some kind of arrangements where NATO allies provide also some assurances in different ways to Ukraine, absolutely possible that will be part of an overall solution to the conflict in Ukraine to maximize the likelihood of Ukraine being able to deter any further attacks or new Russian attacks against their country.
Financial Times?
Sorry. I have nothing more to say that what we have seen over 1 year, close to one year of this war, is that what type of support we provide evolves. And there is a discussion, as there's been discussions about every step. We had a discussion about Patriots, we had a discussion about armor, we had a discussion about battle tanks, we had a discussion of long-range HIMARS, and this is an important discussion. The important thing is that NATO is not a part of the conflict, even though NATO allies provide advanced weapon systems to Ukraine. We have the right to provide support for them because Ukraine defend themselves against a war of aggression. And then regardless of what you think about aircraft, that will take time. So we need to now at least ensure that we deliver what we can deliver in the short term, because that can really make a difference on the battlefield in the coming weeks and months.
Financial Times.
Thank you so much. Sorry to be a pain. I wanted to ask about the ammunition. From what you've said, it doesn't sound like this is a solvable problem. If they are using it faster than we can build it, delivery times are doubling, as you've just said, and we can't just invent new factories. How do we solve that then? Or are we at a point now where Ukraine is at a ceiling of what can be provided month by month by NATO allies and non-NATO allies in the larger coalition of Rammstein? Are we at that point already now, where Ukraine has a limit of what it can use every month? Thank you.
So what I said was that the current rate of ammunition consumption is higher, bigger than the current rate of production. That's a factual thing. But since we have been aware of that for some time, we have started to do something. We're not just sitting there idle and watching this happening. So that's the reason why we over several months have worked hard at NATO and also within the Rammstein format to ramp up production. That's the reason why we launched this out-of-circle extraordinary review of our stockpiles, why we have collected the data, and now we are using this data to go to individual allies and work with them to sign contracts with the industry. And that's exactly what they do. And of course the industry has the capability to increase the production also short term. Sometimes there is some non-used or not utilized capability there. But even when you have a factory running, you can have more shifts. You can even work during weekends. This is an issue of cost and price. And then you need, of course, to invest in new in production capability. And that's also what they do, especially when the defense industry can have multi-year contracts. And we have seen several examples of allies now signing multi-year contracts, and then the industry have the demand signal they need to make the investments. So yes, we have a challenge, yes, we have a problem, but problems are there to be solved, and we are addressing that that problem, and we have strategies to solve it both in the short and also longer term to also mobilize the defense industry. And if there is anything NATO allies and our economies and our societies have proved over decades, is that we are dynamic, we are adaptable, we can change when needed. So if you just send a clear signal and also mobilize the financial resources, as we are doing with our pledge to invest more, then the industry have proven extremely capable of producing more.
The time is now 9:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are taking a look back at a press conference that took place earlier this morning. We have here NATO's Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg speaking on ongoing support for Ukraine. We know that President Biden has announced that he does plan to travel to the area, to Poland to be exact, during this month. February 20th through February 22nd is when President Biden plans to meet with other Western leaders to discuss ongoing military aid for the war-torn country. Again, the time is 9:16. Let's go ahead and take a 2-minute commercial break. We'll bring you all up to speed on other top stories and live events that we are following right here at Live Now from Fox. Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. The United States military shoots down yet another object over Lake Huron on Sunday. This now brings the total number of objects shot down over North America to 8. Fox News correspondent Alexandria Hoff breaks down the number of shoot downs and how the United States is responding to them.
As a whole dates back over 3 weeks, and to piece it all together, let's take a look back at a timeline starting on January 21st. That's when U.S. defense officials tell Fox News that the spy flight was launched from China. On the 28th, it was first detected in U.S. airspace over the Aleutian Islands. 4 days later, civilians in Montana spot it. The following day, the Pentagon confirms it publicly. By the 4th, it was shot down off the coast of South Carolina. So that is it for the enormous Chinese spy craft's journey. Then, on the 9th, a new unidentified object is detected over Alaska. This past Friday, the 10th, it is shot down. The same day, another object is detected entering Canadian airspace. A senior U.S. official describes that as a small metallic balloon with a tethered payload. It was shot down yesterday by a U.S. F-22 fighter jet. Also yesterday, a radar anomaly causes the U.S. military to scramble fighter jets. Some airspace over Montana was closed, no object was found, and the airspace reopened. Today, bipartisan concern is being expressed about how information is being relayed.
The Biden administration needs to stop briefing Congress through our television sets and actually come and sit down and brief us. What we're seeing here is a number of announcements by the administration without any real information being given to Congress.
I have real concerns about why the administration is not being more forthcoming with everything that it knows. But part of the problem here is that both of the second and the third objects were shot down in very remote areas. So my guess is that there's just not a lot of information out there yet to share.
On the suspected Chinese spy craft, Democratic Senator John Tester added today that he would have handled it differently. In Washington, Alexandria Hoff, Fox News.
And the United States has blacklisted 5 Chinese companies and 1 research institute that are believed to be linked to Beijing's aerospace programs. The U.S. is retaliating against China for sending an alleged spy balloon to float over many parts of the United States. That balloon was shot down last Saturday, and divers from the United States Navy have been collecting its debris for examination. Now, the economic restrictions that were announced last Friday followed the Biden administration's pledge to consider broader efforts to address Chinese surveillance activities. They will make it more difficult for the 6 Chinese entities to obtain American technology patents, exports, and this move is expected to cause more tension between the United States and China. China has said that the airspace was in the sky only to monitor the weather, but United States officials disagree. Now, on yesterday, again, the United States military shooting down the 4th unidentified flying object. So we did get an update from the Pentagon. Let's go ahead and listen in.
So short notice and on Super Bowl Sunday here in the U.S., no less. In light of tonight's takedown of an airborne object over Lake Huron, Michigan, we wanted to ensure you had the latest information and also answer any questions you have in order to provide any additional context on NORAD's efforts to monitor, track, and appropriately address these kinds of objects. Joining us tonight is Assistant Secretary of Defense for Homeland Defense and Hemispheric Affairs, Melissa Dalton, and General Glenn Van Herk, Commander of North American Aerospace Defense Command and U.S. Northern Command. Today's discussion is on the record. I'll turn it over to Assistant Secretary Dalton, who will provide some brief comments, followed by General Van Herk, and then we'll take your questions. With that, over to you, Secretary Dalton.
Great. Thanks so much, Pat. And good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining the call. We do aim to be transparent about our military operations, and so we wanted to provide an update on the most recent Homeland Defense operations that occurred this afternoon. I'm going to provide a brief overview and then turn to General Van Herk to provide an operational perspective as well. In light of the People's Republic of China balloon that we took down last Saturday, we have been more closely scrutinizing our airspace at these altitudes, including enhancing our radar, which may at least partly explain the increase in objects that we've detected over the past week. We also know that a range of entities, including countries, companies, research organizations, operate objects at these altitudes for purposes that are not nefarious, including legitimate research. That said, because we have not yet been able to definitively assess what these recent objects are, we have acted out of an abundance of caution to protect our security and interests. The spy balloon from the PRC was, of course, different in that we knew precisely what it was. These most recent objects do not pose a kinetic military threat, but they're passed in proximity to sensitive DoD sites, and the altitude that they were flying could be a hazard to civilian aviation and thus raise concerns. Again, as we have said, we do not assess that the recent objects pose any direct threat to people on the ground, and we are laser focused on confirming their nature and purpose, including through intensive efforts to collect debris in the remote locations where they have landed after being shot down. We are in close coordination and cooperation with the Government of Canada, as well as through NORAD with the Canadian military. Thanks very much. Look forward to your questions, and I'll hand it over to General Van Herk.
Thanks, Secretary Dalton. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today and provide you an update. Every day, North American Aerospace Defense Command and United States Northern Command monitor the approaches to North America and the United States of America across all domains. And yesterday evening, approximately 16:45 or 4:45 Eastern Time on 11 February, NORAD detected a radar contact in Canadian airspace, approximately 70 or so miles north of the United States border. We began tracking that radar contact, and when it became clear it was unknown, following normal NORAD procedures, it was not talking to the Federal Aviation Administration, no squawk, and approaching our air defense identification zone. I scrambled F-15 fighters from Portland, Oregon, along with a KC-135 tanker support from Fairchild Air Force Base, Washington, to go investigate, to identify what the radar contact was. At 1800 Eastern, or 6 p.m. Eastern, the radar track crossed into the United States sovereign airspace. At 7:04 Eastern time, the F-15s with their tanker support were on station to investigate. We continued to investigate, and what's important to point out, this is near dark, within a half hour, 45 minutes of dark. We continued to investigate, to identify, locate the object. We were unsuccessful. It's also important to point out in this part of the United States, we did not have data link for queuing like we had had before. Data link allows the radars on the ground to share information to the fighters airborne, allowing them to cue their sensors and their visual acuity in an attempt to visually identify the trap. At sunset, we were unable to find the track. Also, our radar operators lost the track on radar, and the FAA was never tracking the radar. Therefore, that's why we called it an anomaly, because we weren't able to identify it. Several hours later, overnight, we began seeing an intermittent radar contact east of the position in Montana as it approached Wisconsin. At that point, we developed a game plan once we started seeing another radar contact to go investigate. It's likely, but we have not confirmed that the track that we saw in Wisconsin was likely the same track in Montana. We elected to scramble with the best position to intercept if we needed to engage with the lowest collateral damage, and that was in the eastern portion of Wisconsin, just prior to Lake Michigan, when the fighters became on the track of interest at that time. We monitored the track of interest as it passed over Lake Michigan. We assessed that it was no threat, physical threat, military threat, legal infrastructure. That's my assessment. It continues to be today. However, at this point, we still have an unknown, and it forces a broader discussion about what is this object that's in our U.S. Sovereign airspace. It's within our Federal Aviation Administration airspace, not providing any communications, not providing any notice that could potentially help us deconflict. And therefore, we wanted to investigate further. We did. It tracked across the upper peninsula of Michigan. We were cleared to engage the target in eastern upper peninsula of Michigan, overland, and ultimately down the object at this point, about 15 nautical miles east of the upper peninsula in Lake Huron. What we saw is an object that began drifting, potentially most likely landed in Canadian waters in Lake Huron. And we have ongoing recovery operations with Coast Guard assets moving towards this area. I would like to highlight this entire time, I remained in contact with my Canadian boss, General Wayne Eyre. The Canadians were very supportive. The Canadians launched 2 F-18s plus their tanker as well to support this operation. The fighters were from Madison, Wisconsin, Air National Guard unit. We utilized a tanker from Pittsburgh Air National Guard, and we had an AWACS on station from Tinker Air Force Base, Oklahoma. That's all I have for my operational update, and I look forward to your questions.
Secretary Dalton, General Van Herk, thank you both. For our first question, we'll go to Associated Press, Tara Kopp.
Hi, thank you very much, both of you, for doing this at this late hour. For Secretary Dalton and for General Van Herk, you know, we've had 4 shoot downs in the last 8 days. can you talk about the sense of concern you have, and should Americans be worried? This is a very rare thing to have this many shoot downs or any shoot downs over U.S. airspace. And then secondly, General Van Hert, can you give us any indication of what your pilots are seeing and reporting? Thanks.
Hey, before we jump into the question, just a reminder, everyone, please mute your phones. Thank you. Sounds like we have an open mic out there. My apologies. Over to you, ma'am.
Great. Tara, thanks so much for the question and for dialing in also at a late hour. The safety and security of the American people are job number one for us at the Department of Defense and certainly for NORAD and General Van Hert's team. We, following the track of the PRC balloon last week, as I mentioned at the top, we have been more closely scrutinizing our airspace at these altitudes, enhancing our radar, which may at least partly explain the increase in the objects detected. But we also know that there are a range of entities out there, whether they're private companies, research organizations, that operate objects at these altitudes for purposes that are not nefarious, including legitimate research. But because we have not been able to definitively assess what these recent objects are, the president wanted to act out of an abundance of caution to protect our security and our interests. So we will remain vigilant. We have made these enhancements to our radars, and the operations this past week have been successful in bringing down these potential threats. And we are hard at work now recovering the debris to better understand certainly the capabilities of the surveillance balloon from the PRC, but also the nature of these unidentified objects to better understand, were they surveillance objects, what was their purpose, what are their capabilities, and we look forward to sharing more as we learn more in the coming days.
Thanks, Melissa. Let me just add on. So your question was about citizens being considered. I've assessed all of these to be non-kinetic threats to the homeland. And I don't see that changing even when we recover debris. Every day, NORAD and United States Northern Command are ready to defend as required. So I think this is a story where we were successful in detecting and if needed to respond. What I would tell you is what we're seeing is very, very small objects that produce a very, very low radar cross-section. I'm not going to go into detail about shapes or anything like that, really, because it's really, really difficult for pilots. At the altitudes we're operating, it's a very, very slow object in the space, if you will, going at the speed of the wind, essentially. And our pilots are going 700 miles per hour to give us what I would consider factual, scientific-based description of what we see. And therefore, I'm hesitant to tell you that. With that being said, I would like to talk about the radar and the challenges that we face, something going this slow. So as Assistant Secretary Dalton talked about, radars essentially filter out information based on speed. So you can set various gates, we call them velocity gates, that allow us to filter out low-speed clutter. So if you had radars on all the time that we're looking at anything from 0 speed up to, say, 100, you would see a lot more information. We have adjusted some of those gates to give us better fidelity on seeing slower objects. You can also filter out by altitude. And so with some adjustments, we've been able to get a better categorization of radar tracks now, and that's why I think you're seeing these overall. Plus, there's a heightened alert to look for this information. I hope that adds additional clarification.
Just one quick follow-up. 4 shoot downs in 8 days. When was the last time that U.S. fighters were scrambled and shot something down over U.S. airspace? I can't remember anything, and it just seems like there's a large and quick escalation to shooting down objects.
I'll have to get with our historians. I believe this is the first time within United States of America airspace that NORAD or United States Northern Command has taken kinetic action against an airborne object.
Thank you, Qatar. Thank you, sir, ma'am. Let's go to Jen Griffin, Fox News.
Hey, thanks, Pat. This is Liz. I'll be asking for Jen today. Are these balloons that have been shot down since Friday, or are they weather balloons?
You want me to take
Thanks
that?
very much for the question. Yep, go ahead, Glenn.
Yeah, so I'm not going to categorize them as balloons. We're calling them objects for a reason. Certainly the event off the South Carolina coast for the Chinese spy balloon, that was clearly a balloon. These are objects. I'm not able to categorize how they stay aloft. It could be a gaseous type of balloon inside a structure, or it could be some type of a propulsion system. But clearly, they're able to stay aloft. I would be hesitant to and urge you not to attribute it to any specific country. We don't know. That's why it's so critical to get our hands on these so that we can further assess and analyze what they are.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Nancy Youssef, Wall Street Journal.
Thank you. To both of you, you're saying that their preliminary assessment is that they don't pose a kinetic threat, but that they are objects and not balloons, and that you need to sort of adjust your radar. And I guess I'm trying to get an understanding, what is the expectation going forward, or at least in the next few days? Is it your plan to continue to shoot these down, or to make adjustments such that you can make assessments better, that they don't always have to happen when you're shooting something down? I'm trying to get a sense of the adjustment, General Panrick, that you referred to, and what that will look like, practically speaking, in the days ahead. Thank you.
Nancy, thanks for the question. So the expectation going forward is we'll continue to doing our mission exactly like we've been doing now, approaching 65 years for NORAD. If there's an unknown object that enters either Canadian or U.S. airspace, we will go out, we will attempt to identify it. If it's a threat, kinetic threat, military threat, I am delegated the authority if it commits a hostile act or hostile intent. And let me describe hostile act. Hostile act would be shooting a missile, dropping a bomb, taking aggressive action. A hostile intent would be maneuvering to an offensive position against our forces or something like that. In that situation, I'm cleared directly to engage without further permission. In this case, there's no hostile act or hostile intent, but it is an unknown object, and therefore we have to have a further discussion across the government, both the government of Canada in some cases and the government of the United States, to assess, is it a risk to national security by passing over key covered facilities such as our missile fields and other structure? Is it a risk to flight safety? Is it a risk to personnel on the ground? And then if you're going to take action, you have to make an assessment of what is the risk of collateral damage to potentially boats and mariners out over the water, our infrastructure, and people on the ground. That's essentially the process you go to and have to go through. And we've done that on each one of these. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go to David Martin, CBS.
You say that this is the first time we've ever had shoot downs, at least as to the best of your memory. But has any of this happened before the Chinese balloon was discovered? Have there been these unidentified objects which have been tracked for a while and then left U.S. airspace, but have entered and for one reason or another were not, what should I say, prosecuted like you've been doing these, the ones since the Chinese balloon?
Yeah, David, so great question. Thanks for that. So we have scrambled in the past against radar tracks that we've been unable to correlate with fighters. That has happened over years. And sometimes it's attributed to potentially being birds. Sometimes it's been attributed to weather. Sometimes we don't know what to attribute it to. What I would say is you go back and look over time, we've been able to figure out the best way to track various sources, including the high altitude balloons that we've talked about recently back to 2019 and prior, and couple that with our adjustments of our radar, it gives us a better ability to detect and have better domain awareness, as you've heard me talk about. I don't know if Secretary Dalton wants to add anything to that.
Thank you very much, General Herc. I would just add to that as we learn more about these objects, and certainly the PRC balloon, we're going to enhance our understanding of the characteristics of them that will perhaps enable us to look back at prior instances that were potentially overlooked or weren't looked closely enough at, to see if there's a comparison to be made there, and certainly will help us going forward to better identify and track these types of objects and balloons.
Have you reached the object that went down off northern Alaska?
David, we're actively searching for that object right now. I've got a Navy P-8, which is surveilling the area with helicopters as well. Once we locate that object, we'll put an Arctic security package in there and begin the analysis and recovery, but we don't have it right now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Courtney Cubey, NBC.
Hi, thanks. How are you so confident that the initial balloon was Chinese? Were there some markings on it? I'm trying to figure out why, because from very early on, it seemed that there was a real confidence versus these last three that we can't get any sense of who owns them or what they were doing.
Thanks, Courtney.
Some sort of emergency press briefing that's supposed to take place now.
Hey, we have a hot mic out there. Go ahead, Secretary.
Thanks, Courtney. Yeah, thank you. So, Courtney, for the PRC balloon, we had a basis in intelligence to know definitively that its point of origin was the People's Republic of China.
So what I'm struggling with now is these last three that we still are calling objects. We don't know what they are. You knew that the Chinese one was surveilling, and potentially you knew who it belonged to, and yet there was no effort to, there was a decision not to take it down until it was over the ocean. I understand that there was concerns about everything on the ground there, but can someone explain why the decision is made to take these last three unknown objects? We don't know who they belong to. We don't know what they're doing. But I still don't quite understand why the decision was made to literally in succession. It seems like they're being taken down faster and faster and faster. I mean, is there some other concern or threat that you're tracking that is giving a heightened sense of need to take these down?
Courtney, thank you. The process that General Van Herk described earlier in terms of the criteria that we work through to determine whether these objects, or in the case of the PRC balloon, the balloon was a threat. We look to see if it's going to pose a kinetic military threat. In both cases, that was not the case. We look to see, is it surveilling potentially DoD sensitive sites? We knew that was the case in both instances, and it was even more concerning in the case of the PRC balloon because we knew that it was a PRC balloon. We also consider, is it a threat to civilian aviation? In the case of the PRC balloon, it was flying at an altitude that it did not pose a threat to civilian aviation. And so that was part of the criteria for bringing it down over the water when we could safely do so, in addition to its enormous size. It was 200 feet tall. Payload was the size of 3 school buses. And, for these unidentified objects being much smaller, but unfortunately flying at an altitude that did pose a risk potentially to safe civilian aviation, that was part of the criteria that went into deciding to take the objects down over the last 3 days sooner in the tracking cycle. So, that's the process that we have rigorously worked through over the last week. General Van Herk, anything you want to add?
No, Melissa, I think you're right on. I don't have anything to add.
Thank you. Let's go to Brent Dahlberg, Michigan Radio.
Hi, thanks. A missile seems like a particularly destructive weapon to be using if there's a desire to investigate and figure out what these are afterwards. Can you explain why, explain the weapons choice?
Absolutely. Melissa, if you don't mind, I'll take this one. So, first of all, maintaining a radar track on an object this small is very hard. So taking a radar shot, such as an AIM-120, would be a lower probability of success. We assessed taking a gunshot yesterday in that event as well as today. And the pilots in each situation felt that that was really unachievable because of the size, especially yesterday in the altitude, and also because of the challenge to acquire it visually because it's so small. It's also potentially a safety of flight issue because you have to get so close to the object before you see it that you potentially could fly into the debris or the actual object. Therefore, in each situation, the AIM-9X, a heat-seeking missile or infrared missile that sees contrast, has been the weapons of choice against the objects which we've been seeing. In each case, we have taken extreme caution to ensure that we limit potential collateral damage. So today, we work closely with the FAA to clear out the airspace. I gave directions specifically to the pilots to use their visual acuity to check for mariners on the ground, airplanes in the air, to clear with their radars as well. And when they were comfortable that we could minimize collateral damage, they selected the best weapon today. That was the AIM-9X, and they took the shot.
Thank you. Let's go to Helene Cooper, New York Times.
Hi, thanks, Pat, and thanks for doing this. This is for General Van Herk. Because you still haven't been able to tell us what these things are that we are shooting out of the sky, that raises the question, have you ruled out aliens or extraterrestrials, and if so, why? Because that is what everyone is asking us right now.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Helene. I'll let the intel community and the counterintelligence community figure that out. I haven't ruled out anything at this point. We continue to assess every threat or potential threat unknown that approaches North America with an attempt to identify it.
Thanks.
Okay, let's go to Oren Lieberman, CNN.
Thanks for doing this. Are you currently tracking other unidentified objects in U.S. airspace? And you've now shot down 3 objects in 3 days. Are we to believe these are the first 3 unidentified objects in U.S. airspace, or do you believe there are dozens or potentially hundreds of other such objects that have flown through U.S. airspace? And have any of these recent objects interfered with pilot sensors? Thank you.
Yeah, for your last question, I'm not going to talk about the sensors and what we've seen. If you don't mind, that needs to come out through the intel communities and what we've seen. I'm not currently tracking any other objects at this point. That doesn't mean there couldn't be more at some point in the future, but right now we're not seeing anything. As far as, why previously, well, I don't know if there was more. We do know after the fact that there was high altitude balloons because we went back and we were able to reconstruct that. As far as these specific objects at this time, I'm unaware to say. It's certainly possible, but I don't have the fidelity to give you the answer. We will go look at the data to see if we can figure anything out about the potential for not seeing these previously.
Thank you.
Let's go to Phil Stewart. Phil Stewart, Reuters.
Hey there. Just want to double check what exactly. I know you talked about the fact that we weren't looking for slower speed aircraft and that these objects had a lower radar cross section. But could you just kind of explain to us what makes these objects in particular more difficult to track, or why you weren't tracking them before? And then I guess the other question I think everybody's kind of wondering is, now that you've tweaked everything, should the American public be expecting, lots more shoot downs? Thanks.
Thanks, Phil. What makes them really hard to detect and track is their size and potentially shape. We'll get our hands on them at some point. I can't confirm that right now, but that could certainly play a role or a a factor in this. As far as going forward, I'll go back to my mission is to defend our homeland in both my NORAD and NORTHCOM hat. Anything that approaches North America, if it's unknown, I'm going to go identify it and assess, is it a threat? If it is a threat, I'll shoot it down. If it's not a threat, the kinetic military threat that we talked about earlier, it's not committing a hostile act or hostile intent, then we'll have a broader discussion. Your second part of that is really about what are we going to do in the future is really a policy decision. I'll ask Secretary Dalton if she wants to add anything.
I'd only add again that the safety and security of the American people is job number one for us. And for any of these operations, we fine-tune them to ensure that there's going to be little to no collateral damage. None of the operations over the last week have resulted in collateral damage.
But Secretary Dalton, could you just explain then, do we expect that there's been a policy decision that will lead us to near daily shoot downs as we detect these things more and more?
Bill, thank you. We are taking this very much on a case-by-case basis. Each operation has been different. And we will certainly keep you updated as we continue to learn more about these objects and the PRC balloon and what that means for us going forward.
Thank you. Let's go to Ben Brash, Washington Post.
Thank you very much, both, for taking the time. More directly, and in reference to the last question, is it our policy or a preference of the United States government still to not shoot down anything over U.S. territory? When is it that you make that call? I know you talked about assessing if anything was a kinetic threat, but is it policy or preference? Thank you very much.
The policy is to...
All right, the time here, 9:51. You are streaming live now from Fox. We will continue to bring you all the latest update on that fourth unidentified object that has been shot down within the past 8 days. But at this time, let's go ahead and shift our attention to Russia's war on Ukraine as it nears its 1-year mark. Just last week, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met with European leaders to hammer out new deals on aid and equipment for his nation. Joining us now live from Kyiv, Ukraine, is Fox's Trey Yanks. Good morning, Trey. Thank you so much for joining us. What are the latest developments?
Rain, good afternoon. This is a story that is developing each and every hour. In the eastern part of Ukraine right now, fierce battles rage on around key strategic cities as the Russians push forward with their invasion into this country, and the Ukrainians look to not only defend, but also liberate territory in the southern part of their country. Next Friday will mark 1 year since Russia invaded Ukraine, and it has been a year that left thousands of civilians dead, thousands of Ukrainian soldiers, and a world really on the brink of a much larger conflict due to the fact that Russia is threatening to escalate this war if Western weapons continue to flow into Ukraine. Just last week, we spoke with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and he described the situation as difficult for his soldiers on the Eastern Front, but he also understands that the entire country has to brace for what could be very bloody and violent days ahead. There is a real understanding that Russian President Vladimir Putin is willing to take this war to the next level if his forces do lose more territory in the eastern part of Ukraine. And there is no end in sight. There is no peace process playing out right now. There are no conversations taking place at an international level. And it's setting up a situation of a conflict that could drag on for years. Rain?
Trey, you know, we have heard from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky since the beginning of this invasion, and he has consistently pleaded for additional aid and support from his Western allies. Now, we are beginning to see Western leaders ramp up its advanced military support, right? Whether that's advanced weaponry or training. And this is something that NATO was previously reluctant to do. So why the change of heart?
Slowly but surely, Ukraine's Western allies are providing the weapons to this country that it needs to win the conflict. For a very long time, the focus was basically on maintaining the Ukrainian military efforts so that Russia couldn't invade into this country any further. And the types of weapons that Ukraine needed have also changed throughout this conflict. In the early days of the war, Ukraine needed Javelin anti-tank missiles from the United States and its European allies. The Russians were trying to target this city, the capital of Kyiv, and other critical population centers, and they were using tank columns down long expressways to basically gain territory. The needs for the Ukrainians have now shifted to a more rural battlefield. In the eastern part of Ukraine, it's very flat. There are many fields. And the Ukrainians need things like long-range missiles and artillery. They have gotten significant artillery support from NATO allies and from other allies around the world. What they haven't got, and basically the request right now that's on the table, is focused on long-range missiles. They want to be able to hit those Russian positions that are far back close to the Russian border. They want to ensure that the supply lines are cut off for Russian troops as they continue attacks into the country. And also they're hoping that ultimately, in the future, European allies are going to come around and offer combat planes to Ukraine so they can conduct more air missions against these Russian troops in these positions across the Donbas region, this critical region in the eastern part of Ukraine, and ultimately try to win the conflict before more innocent lives are lost.
And Trey, you mentioned that Russian President Vladimir Zelensky has warned that if Ukraine continues to receive Western support, he would retaliate. Now, the White House has announced that President Biden will travel to Poland near the end of this month. When could we possibly see things escalate to the next level, if so?
So Ukrainian officials believe that Russian President Vladimir Putin could escalate this conflict any day. And it really does appear in the eastern part of the country, in Luhansk and Donetsk, these critical regions in the east, and also in the south, the part of the Kherson region and the Zaporizhia region that are controlled by Russian forces. That Vladimir Putin's troops are already trying to move forward and launch a massive offensive in addition to the one that they've already conducted. And they're using what they consider as a secret weapon, a group that is largely seen as an organization filled with people who are committing war crimes. And this is called the Wagner Group. Denis Prigozhin, a man who was previously known as a chef to Vladimir Putin, is now a man who is leading a paramilitary force on the ground in eastern Ukraine against the Ukrainians on behalf of the Russians. And they are sending what has been described by Ukrainian troops here as waves of basically cannon fodder at the Ukrainian lines, trying to grind down these positions and ultimately move their Russian forces sometimes 100 or 200 meters. So the possibility for escalation does certainly remain. Vladimir Putin has the ability to fire things like ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, those Iranian-made Shahed drones at major population centers like the capital of Kyiv and Ukraine's second largest city of Kharkiv. But the question is, what will that attack look like if and when it comes? And will it be focused around that February 24th date, the one-year mark of this invasion? Rain?
Now, again, as you mentioned, we're nearing the one-year mark of Russia's war on Ukraine, and many officials pleading for a de-escalation. But Trey, if worse would come to worse, let's say an attack on a NATO country by Russia, what would happen then?
So that's a very dangerous scenario, and one that officials around the world have to consider. What would the response of the United States, for example, or other NATO countries be if Russian forces were to deliberately or even accidentally target a country like Poland? And it was something that developed just a few months ago when a missile landed in Polish territory, killing 2 people. And there was this question about how NATO as a whole would respond, because an attack on a NATO country would trigger Article 5, which would then drag in a lot of world superpowers, including the United States, into this battle. And it would take it from what we have seen now on the ground as what analysts would describe as a proxy war, the United States and Ukraine's European allies supporting the Ukrainians in their efforts to defend their territory and liberate their territory, to a war that had more direct involvement from Ukraine's Western allies. And so it's a dangerous scenario, but it is a scenario that is certainly possible and something that the United States is certainly prepared for. It's part of the reason that you see American troops in NATO countries like Poland. You see American weapons, not only those Bradley fighting vehicles, but the M1 Abrams tanks that are ultimately going to come into Ukraine. Those types of weapons are stationed across Europe at different U.S. bases, and it does give the Americans that extra support and ability, if they needed to get more involved in this fight. Again, this is all hypothetical for now, and the Americans and Ukraine's European allies hope it stays that way. But certainly, given the unpredictable nature of Russian President Vladimir Putin, the threats of nuclear war, and the escalation and human rights violations on the ground in Ukraine, it's certainly something that can't be completely ruled out.
All right, Fox's Trey Yanks joining us live from Kyiv, Ukraine. Thank you so much for the context when it comes to this subject. All right, guys, quickly approaching the 10 a.m. mark. And again, the White House has said that the president will visit Poland from February 20th to the 22nd. He is expected to meet with the Polish president. Let's take a 2-minute commercial break. Live Now from Fox returns right after this. Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. Let's listen into this most recent update from NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg.
NATO allies have been supporting the relief efforts, including with search and rescue teams, firefighters, medical personnel, and seismic experts. Moreover, NATO allies and NATO has agreed to deploy shelter facilities to help accommodate people displaced by the earthquakes. We stand in strong solidarity with our ally Turkey. NATO defense ministers will meet this week at an important moment for transatlantic security. We will take decisions to strengthen NATO's deterrence and defense. We will address our industrial capacity and increase the protection of our critical undersea infrastructure. And we will step up and sustain our support for Ukraine. Almost 1 year since the invasion, President Putin is not preparing for peace. He is launching new offensives. So we must continue to provide Ukraine with what it needs to win and to achieve a just and sustainable peace. Ukraine's Defense Minister Alexei Reznikov will join us tomorrow, both for the US-led contact group for Ukraine and for a meeting with NATO ministers. Together we will address Ukraine's urgent needs. It is clear that we are in a race of logistics. Key capabilities like ammunition, fuel and spare parts must reach Ukraine before Russia can seize the initiative on the battlefield. Speed will save lives. If Putin wins in Ukraine, the message to him and other authoritarian regimes is that force is rewarded. That would make the world more dangerous and all of us more vulnerable. So I welcome the recent announcements by allies on new tanks, heavy weaponry and training for Ukraine. And I look forward to further deliveries. Our message is clear. NATO stands with Ukraine for as long as it takes. Ministers will also address how to step up our practical support for Bosnia and Herzegovina, Georgia and Moldova, 3 valued NATO partners which face Russian threats. On Wednesday, allies will take decisions to further strengthen our deterrence and defence. We have already done a lot, placing 40,000 troops under NATO command in the eastern part of the alliance, backed by major air and naval power, and doubling the number of battle groups from 4 to 8. Now we need to ensure we have the right forces and capabilities for the longer term. So I expect allies will agree new guidance for NATO defence planning. This will be a key driver of capability changes and ensure credible deterrence and defence in the years to come. Ministers will also focus on ways to increase our defence industrial capacity and replenish stockpiles. The war in Ukraine is consuming an enormous amount of ammunition and depleting allied stockpiles.
All right, you're streaming live now from Fox. We are taking a listen in to a news conference held by NATO's Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg. This took place earlier this morning. The Secretary General speaking to the ongoing military support for Ukraine. But at this time, let's go ahead and switch gears to a lighter topic. Let's take a live now look at the State Farm Stadium. This was the site of football's biggest night, the Super Bowl 57. Some people tuned in for the game. Some people tuned in for Rihanna's concert. Some people were really looking forward to the commercials. So joining us now is Dr. Sean Snate, the director of UCF's Institute for Economic Forecasting. Thank you so much for joining us. So what were your initial thoughts when watching the Super Bowl's commercials?
Well, it was a great game, first and foremost. But yeah, I think if I had to choose a single word to kind of describe the batch of commercials in this year's Super Bowl, it would be nostalgia. You know, you had throwbacks to the movie Caddyshack, Grease, Breaking Bad, Zoolander. So it was playing off of I think of the nostalgia for a lot of viewers. Many of these commercials were.
So we know that the Super Bowl is a time when people gather with their families and their friends. So talk to me about the marketing psychology behind triggering people's good memories when you talk about the nostalgia that was in the commercials.
Well, yeah, I think that's what the ad makers are going for. They want to associate those kind of feelings with their product or service. And so if you are a big Zoolander fan, then Pepsi is now associating itself with your feelings about that movie. And so it is it is the pardon the pun, it is the Super Bowl of advertising. I don't know if they had the final viewership numbers in, but you're talking north of 100 million viewers watching the Super Bowl. I mean, that is a lot of eyes that are captured by this event. So, this is why these commercials are so expensive to run. And I can't think of another broadcasting event where, once the event is over, the discussion of the advertisements and the commercials continues on. I mean, no doubt, today there'll be, scores of articles written about the commercials themselves and ranking the best and ranking the worst. And so, you know, the buzz here doesn't just end with the event, it lingers on for some time. And if you have one of these ads that sort of hits it out of the park, you know, the return on that investment, you know, just continues.
Definitely a huge opportunity for companies and advertisers. So you mentioned ranking the ads. What was your favorite? If you can give me just one that really stood out to you and one that you weren't too impressed by.
Okay, well, you know, this is personal opinion, and everyone will have their own commercials to put here. But I'm a dog person, and so I think the dog food commercial, which sort of traced a woman as she was, you know, going through milestones of her life, you know, as a young woman, and then getting married, having a baby. And the dog is there, you know, with her throughout all these milestones, and it sort of ends, you know, with a shot of the dog who's, you know, visibly aged, and he's got gray on his muzzle, and, you know, there's kind of the hint there that he's not going to be around forever, and so there's, you know, the happiness with this tinge of sadness, and you know, I think that probably appealed to a lot of people. The worst, well, you know, there's some you just don't remember, and so maybe they're the worst. But the one, I guess the one I was kind of disappointed in, because they've had such success in the past with their advertisements, was the E-Trade Baby. You know, they've made some really funny, you know, classic commercials with this stock trading baby, and you know, the ad that ran in the Super Bowl last night just really didn't, in my opinion, live up to its predecessors.
Well, Dr. Snaith, I'll tell you about one commercial that really caught my eye. Maybe it's because LiveNOW from Fox was featured. Maybe I'm biased. But this Tubi commercial, tell me if you saw it or if you heard about it. It had everyone thinking that they sat on the remote or accidentally changed the channel. What do you think about this marketing strategy?
Well, it caught your attention. I'll tell you that. I did, you know, many of us have, you know, so-called cut the cords when it comes to, you know, television, and we're using streaming services, and, you know, not infrequently, you might sit on the remote or hit a button, and suddenly you're popping out of, you know, whatever service or whatever program that you're streaming, and you're kind of scrambling to find the thing. So I think that was pretty clever, and I think it kind of touched on, you know, an almost universal experience that viewers have in you know, the world of streaming entertainment.
It was definitely pretty comical. So we're seeing Super Bowl ads in review. We're talking alcohol brands, TV media, and Jesus. So there's been some controversy over the Jesus commercial that aired during the Super Bowl. What is your perspective from a research point of view? Is this something that we could possibly see more of in the future, religious ads?
Well, you know, this, as I recall, this campaign has been running through the regular season of the NFL. So these types of ads. I mean, you know, the ad itself, you know, I think is not particularly controversial. I think it accurately captured the ethos of our times, where, you know, if someone disagrees with you, you shout them down, you get in their face, you know, you protest, and then there's counter protests. Oh, you know, you voted for this particular politician, well, you're not welcome at Thanksgiving dinner this year. And so, you know, kind of this prevailing ethos, as I said, I thought was captured, you know, very nicely in the ad. And, you know, the message, I think, is controversial, not because what the message is. I mean, if the commercial, you know, ended with, you know, love your neighbor or love, conquers hate. I don't think there'd be any controversy at all. I think it's the mention of Jesus that's, in some folks' minds, creates this particular controversy, which may also capture some of the ethos of our times. But, I think aside from, the mention of religion or Jesus at the end, we've seen ads like this, run historically, kind of sort of public service announcements. The Ad Council has made commercials like that, sort of addressing, social issues. And, I probably one of the most famous I remember, and many might of my generation, there was an ad that featured an actor portraying a Native American on a horse, looking out over a roadway, and people were, throwing fast food wrappers and garbage out the windows of their car, and the whole roadside was littered. I mean, that really, I think, was a watershed moment where we started thinking about, well, maybe this isn't good to just throw garbage on the ground. So, controversy aside, it's really hard to argue with the message of the commercial, and I thought it was well done.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, particularly because the Super Bowl, football in general, is usually a place that's absent of religion and politics, but it definitely got people talking, right? So any final thoughts?
I mean, it's a little bit funny to think about Jesus having an ad agency, but the product there, absent of any religious connection, I think is worthy of selling.
Before I let you go, anything really in particularly that really stood out to you?
I mean, I think that, like I said, it was just, I was surprised at the number of ads that, kind of reached pretty far back into, recent history. And, when you start seeing, Kiss and Ozzy Osbourne, up on the screen, these are, these aren't exactly, the bands of the day. But generally speaking, I think you had some commercials that definitely hit the mark, and some that are absolutely forgettable. And I think that's true every Super Bowl. But it is it is part of the pomp and circumstance of the NFL's championship game.
All right, Dr. Sean Snaith, Director of UCF's Institute for Economic Forecasting. Great convo. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
All right, guys, the time is now 10:17. Let's go ahead and take a 2-minute commercial break. We are monitoring several live events here, so we'll bring you all up to speed on our top stories and live events right after this. Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. It has been 1 week since a 7.8 magnitude earthquake struck Turkey and Syria. This morning, the death toll rose to more than 35,000 people. Just an astonishing number. Joining us now live from Turkey is Fox's Greg Palcock. He has the latest on the recovery efforts. Good morning, Greg.
Hi, Rand. Yeah, we were in the hard-hit port city here in Turkey of Iskenderun. It is as bad hit as any of the towns that we have seen in the last week since the quakes hit this region. But we are a week out from the initial start of this disaster, and the mood is certainly changing. You're right, the overall death toll for the region passing 35,000. Injured, multiples of that. We've done a few things here in Iskenderun as we've been assessing the scene. First, looking at various sites of excavation, desperate searches for attempted rescues of anyone who could still be alive throughout the region. Today, there have been a few instances of that, but more and more it is the recovery of the remains of bodies of those who have been killed by these earthquakes. We've seen bodies being taken away from a couple of sites that we've been at today, and we've seen the deep sorrow of the people here, the grimness really coming, that they are coming face to face with a week on as that death toll mounts and mounts. The people here in Iskenderun, like many other of the hard-hit towns in the region, are desperate. Many are without a home. There is very little water, sewage, plumbing, electricity, food, medicine, you name it. We spent the day at a makeshift emergency hospital run by Turkish medical teams, but backed up by folks from India, both security and aid. And they now, initially they told us they were treating the immediate effects of the earthquakes, that is broken legs, arms, amputations, internal injuries. Now it's secondary. One man had his knees injured because of some aftershocks. Another man was feeling the effects of the huge amount of dust in the air that you have to breathe in. Another woman was just shaken up. It is a natural disaster, Rain, that is turning into a humanitarian catastrophe, and not just here in Turkey. We're not too far from the border with Syria, and Syria, as I'm sure your viewers know, has been racked by civil war for the past 10 plus years, and it's to some degree isolated from the rest of the world, and so they have not had the kind of aid, the kind of international help that has come into Turkey, and that situation is even hard to believe worse than this. I've been in war zones, I've been in disaster areas, and from time to time, yes, there is the smell of death in the air here in this town, and it is grim. Back to you.
All right, that was the latest from our Fox News correspondent, Greg Palcock, bringing us a live report from Turkey. Now, search and rescue operations will continue, and we are seeing some people being found alive amidst the devastation. It seems like pretty miraculous stories, but amidst that death, we are hearing some stories of survival. The time is now 10:23. Let's take a 2-minute commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. The time here on the East Coast, 10:26, 8:26 Mountain Time, and we are getting this live press briefing from Phoenix, Arizona. Let's listen into the Super Bowl victory press conference with the Kansas City Chiefs.
One opportunity to get the first Super Bowl in Las Vegas right. We are going to work very hard. We have an exceptional team. We've been working to do this for 60 years. So we are excited about the opportunity. We're excited about the team that we have put together in Las Vegas in order to make this happen. And I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce you to the CEO of Allegiant Airlines, who is also the chair of our host committee, Murray Gallagher.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. And Jay, congratulations. I'm a novice at this. I've been in business many years, but this is not business. This is an event. And one-off events are amazingly interesting to watch from afar, so to speak. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I'm going to be right in the middle of it next year, and I can't be more excited about the team that's going to be putting this together. You see a number of them up here. It's a tough act to follow, but I put these guys up against it. You know, competition's a wonderful thing. It brings out the best in all of us. I personally want to thank our host committee already. They've been here for over a week, observing and doing the things needed to learn the steps that go into such an incredible event. On a personal note, we were fortunate enough to work with the Raiders to put our name on the stadium, Allegiant Stadium. It was a big bite for us at the time, but it's paying dividends, I can say that honestly. The Raiders have been a great partner for us. We look forward in the coming year working much closer with them as a Super Bowl host committee. They're going to be an exceptional host as we go forward, and they have a tough act to follow, but my money's on those guys. Lastly, I want to thank the NFL for giving us this opportunity. Las Vegas is, I think, entering a new era. It's always been known as a destination for entertainment. It now can arguably claim the best sports destination as well. We have to live up to that marker, but my money's on this group, Steve and his team, the host committee, all of those are going to be great. Well, with that, I want to turn it over to Sandra Douglas Morgan. Sandra is the president of the Raiders and my vice chair on the host committee. Sandra?
Well, good morning. It is so exciting to be here, not only to represent the Las Vegas Raiders, Mark Davis and the entire Raiders organization, to welcome the Super Bowl to our home at Allegiant Stadium. I would definitely start by thanking Michael Bidwell, the Bidwell family, and the Arizona Cardinals organization for being such gracious hosts to us as we transition the Super Bowl to Las Vegas. You know, the Silver and Black has had a long history of fight in our blood, of passion, and putting our hearts on the field for our incredible fans. And I know that Las Vegas will do the same as a first-time host city for Super Bowl 58. I'm incredibly proud of my hometown of Las Vegas and to see it transform into one of the sports destinations in the world. Our ability to host a global audience, provide the highest level of hospitality, and infuse all of that with excitement, glitz, and glamour that naturally comes from being in Las Vegas and one of the greatest new football facilities in the NFL will be an unforgettable experience. So we look forward to working with the Commissioner, with Peter, and so many of the great people at the NFL to make sure that Super Bowl 58 will be an unforgettable experience. And with that, I'd like to announce and introduce you all to the great governor of the state of Nevada, Joe Lombardo.
All right, it's always a great honor to go last. So what a fantastic day. It's such a quiet crowd, right? You got to build up. We just came off a fantastic Super Bowl, and we should be celebrating. You guys are really stoic. So, Governor Hobbs, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And Commissioner, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. What a great honor to host Super Bowl 58. And similar to what Mr. Hill said and the Commissioner said, we know how to do it in Las Vegas and the state of Nevada. So I have a few comments, and then we're going to get on with the ceremony here. So I can tell you, you're going to be dazzled by the lights of Las Vegas Strip, that you're going to be amazed at the world-class entertainment, that you're going to be impressed by the natural beauty of Nevada, and that you're going to enjoy the unforgettable Super Bowl experience at Allegiant Stadium. Thank you, Maury. But I can also tell you, you're going to enjoy a welcome like no other. Our whole city is excited to welcome you to open arms and to make sure that you have an experience that brings you coming back to Las Vegas even after the Super Bowl. And with that, it's an incredible honor to say to the host committee, to the NFL, and to the devoted fans from across the country and the world, welcome to Las Vegas. We can't wait to host you the Nevada way. Thank you.
Okay, I think we have the very first Las Vegas Super Bowl 58 football, so we have that over here. I think you're passing it over. Okay.
Come on, Fitz. Yeah, we got it.
Can you do it?
Arizona forum? We want that. You're right here on the side.
All right, you're streaming live now from Fox. We are watching live at this post-Super Bowl 57 press conference. We have officials here from the NFL speaking about the next Super Bowl, Super Bowl 58, which will take place in Las Vegas. Just moments ago, they presented the very first Super Bowl 58 football. But joining us now live is Rich Salgado, excuse me. And he doesn't have a Super Bowl 58 football as a prop, but he has a Kansas Chiefs helmet. So yesterday, Rich, you had two helmets. You had one for the Philadelphia Eagles, and now I see you have one for the Kansas City Chiefs. You picked a side.
Well, you know, they won. Exciting game, and as you can see, I have a Chiefs sweatshirt in the background as well. So, you know, congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs, Andy Reid, Steve Spagnuolo. And in regards to these helmets, obviously I had two yesterday. Now I have one. One is standing. They're the champions. And I also, again, I have to say a shout out to Marty Cothran and Rydell for providing these helmets. Great props, and they're the champs.
They're the champs. So talk to us about the Super Bowl. What was it like being there in the State Farm Stadium and really taking it all in?
It was so exciting. I mean, you know, it was packed. Obviously, there was over 70,000 people there, and you know, obviously, the Super Bowl MVP was Mr. Mahomes from the Chiefs. But I think a lot of people thought Rihanna was the MVP. I mean, she put on a hell of a show, and you know, the way she was able to move around, and they had her lifting up and down. I'm sure, like, you know, you obviously saw, and all of America saw, and it was very, very exciting to be there. The Eagles fans were, as always, on insane behavior. So it was interesting, very interesting.
So this was a pretty close game, 38-35. Any moments in particular stood out to you the most?
Well, obviously the winning field goal, but you know, most people will say the refs had something to do with it because, you know, I had that big call, that the big holding call on Juju Schuster by the Eagles. So obviously that made a big difference in how the game ended up finishing. And again, just the excitement that was going on, and it was a great game because they were going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
So, Rich, right now we are taking a live now look. The NFL just wrapped up its post-Super Bowl press conference, and officials spoke about Super Bowl 58, which will take place in Las Vegas. Are you making any plans to go to this Super Bowl? Anything that you think might be special about hosting the big game in Las Vegas?
Well, yes, I will definitely be there. and Las Vegas will make for an interesting venue because you've got now this mixture. I'll leave it at that, like a mixture in regards to, you got the big game, you got all the fans coming in, and you have all the casinos that, that run every day. And so you're going to have such a mixed crowd, which will make it for an interesting week in Las Vegas.
Yeah, tourists will definitely have a lot of entertainment things that they can do while they're visiting for the Super Bowl. All right, thank you so much for joining.
I'll tell you one thing, to make a special note, Angelica and I went to the Chiefs victory party afterwards, and that was a lot of fun. I was telling Coach Steve Spagnuolo, who's a very dear friend, him and his wife Maria, that Phoenix, Glendale, Arizona is a special place for him because he's won now his second Super Bowl coaching here in Arizona. The first being 2007, when the Giants beat the Patriots to stop that 19-0 run that they were trying to pull off. And Steve was the defense coordinator of that team, and now this is his third Super Bowl he's winning. 2 with the Chiefs, 1 with the Giants.
Wow, definitely something to make note of. All right, thank you so much for joining us, Rick Big Daddy Salgado. Always a pleasure to have you on the show. Also a Fox News contributor, so you're definitely a friend of Fox. I'll say that.
Absolutely. Even between the news side and the sports side, and you guys, I have Fox covered up and down, A to Z.
All right, guys, it's time here at 10:37 a.m. Let's take a 2-minute commercial break. Live Now from Fox returns right after this.
That's the Murdaugh trial.
Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. The time here on the East Coast, 10:40 a.m. We're following several top stories in breaking news situations here at Live Now from Fox. But first, let's go ahead and listen in live, raw, and unfiltered as the double homicide trial in disgraced South Carolina attorney Alex Murdaugh continues.
for further analysis.
Okay, and when you say a portion of the clippings, does that mean you clip some more and send to DNA, or what does that mean?
So the literal fingernail clippings are what's being submitted within the envelope. So say there's 5 clippings. I will forward approximately 2 to 3 of what's been submitted, place it within the tube, and that's what will be forwarded for analysis.
And did you do the same process with States Exhibit 252, the fingernail clippings from Paul Murdaugh?
Yes, States Exhibit 252 will receive the same preparation for DNA analysis.
Your Honor, at this time the state would move Exhibits 251 and 252 into evidence.
No objection.
They're admitted.
All right, Agent Wynn, next if you could tell us a little about States Exhibit 418, which was Alec Murdaugh's shirt. Could you describe how you first processed the shirt when it was initially received by the lab?
So the white shirt from Richard Murdaugh was submitted with a blood request. On June 9th of 2021, I processed this item for the possible presence of blood. So that entails I first visually examined the shirt for any areas that are consistent with the staining of blood. Then I tested these items that I have indicated with our phenolphthalein presumptive test for blood. 2 stains were tested. Both stains were positive for the possible presence of blood. 1 stain located at the exterior front bottom edge of white shirt was forwarded to the DNA section for further analysis. Afterward,
Just a second.
Okay.
And I'm going to hand you States 460. Now you just said that stain was processed and sent to DNA. How did you process that? Did you send the whole shirt, or how did that work?
So the stain that I had located, I cut that stain from the shirt. I then prepared it for DNA analysis, which means I cut a small portion of that stain, placed it within the tube, labeled that tube, and forwarded the cutting as well as the portion that I have prepared to the DNA section for further analysis.
And that cutting is contained in States 460, is that correct?
That cutting is contained in States 460.
And what date did you perform that initial analysis?
On June 9th of 2021.
And I think you mentioned there was another stain also located on the shirt at that time?
Yes, 2 stains were presumptively tested.
Was that second stain cut on June the 8th?
It was not. It remained in the shirt and was identified with the presumptive test result.
Now, due to ongoing investigation, did you come back and examine that shirt again?
Yes, so afterwards, a request was relayed to me to go back to the shirt and retrieve that stain and forward it for DNA analysis.
Did you do any other testing this second time around?
So when I went to remove that second stain, I met with members of the crime scene unit, Lieutenant Wallace, as well as Special Agent Worley, and they processed the shirt with their LCV testing, which to my understanding is their presumptive test for blood.
And what was discovered during the LCV testing?
So after removing the second stain from the June 9th date that I processed it, 10 additional stains were identified from the LCV processing, which were cut from the shirt and prepared for DNA analysis and forwarded for further testing.
And I will show you States 461. Are those the additional cuttings from the shirt? there are quite a few cuttings here.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so all the cuttings from the shirt are here.
Okay. Now, as far as you're concerned, did you process the shirt any further?
No, besides preparing these additional stains that were identified, nothing further was done.
And what did you do with those cuttings?
I cut a small portion from each of the stains that was indicated as being positive and forwarded it to the DNA section for further analysis.
All right, and State's Exhibit 418 is the defendant's shorts. How were those shorts processed in comparison to the shirt?
So the shorts also were submitted with a blood request. They were processed in a similar manner. Several stains were tested. However, 2 were positive for the possible presence of blood. A stain located at the front left interior pocket of the pair of green shorts was forwarded for further analysis. This was processed on the same June 9th date of 2021. The shorts were also additionally processed at the same time the shirt was additionally processed to retrieve a second stain that was indicated as the possible presence of blood. And then the same members of the crime scene unit also processed the shirt with their LCV testing.
And I believe you still have Exhibit 460 up there. Does that contain the first cutting from the pair of pants on June 8th?
Yes, State's Exhibit 460 contains the first cutting from the pair of shorts from June 9th, I'm sorry.
And then State's Exhibit 461, what cutting, that contains cutting from the pants on July 21st, is that right?
Yes, so State's Exhibit 461 does contain the additional cuttings, so the second stain that had tested positive on the June 9th processing date, as well as 6 additional stains were indicated from the crime scene unit when they processed the pair of shorts with their LCV testing.
And then what did you do with those cuttings once you took them?
The cuttings for the shorts were prepared for DNA analysis. Once again, cutting a small portion of the stain and forwarding it for further analysis.
And I'm going to show you State's 473. You could take a look at that. Do you recognize that as, what do you recognize that as?
So this appears to be a photo of item 20.2, which is the cutting from front left interior pocket of pair of green shorts from Richard Murdaugh.
Your Honor, at this time I would move State's 473 into evidence.
No objection. It's admitted.
Permission to publish.
Yes.
Okay, and Agent Wynn, if you could describe to the jurors what they're looking at in that picture.
So this is the stain that was tested, and as you can see, I have labeled it with the SLED item number, both on the physical item as well as it's contained within a manila envelope, which has the unique case number, item number, that the request was for blood, the location it was taken from, as well as that it's a cutting. In addition, you can see my initials and date from when I prepared this for DNA analysis.
Okay, and again, I'm sorry, what were the presumptive results of the testing for blood?
So the presumptive results for this stain were that it was positive for the possible presence of blood.
And we talked a little bit about the cuttings of the shirt and the shorts. Just to kind of aid the jury in seeing what you actually did. I'm going to show you states 471 and 472. Do you recognize those pictures?
I do recognize these pictures. They are from the additional processing that occurred on the shirt.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would move 471.
You're streaming live now from Fox. We're taking a live now look as the third week of testimony wraps up in the Alex Murdaugh double murder trial. The family's housekeeper took the stand to discuss what she saw the day after the killings, and again, witness testimony resumes today. We do want to switch gears because we have some breaking news that we would like to get to here at Live Now from Fox. A Fulton County Superior Court judge, Robert McBurney, has announced the decision this morning, 3 weeks after the hearing of arguments from prosecutors who urged that this report should be kept secret. They decided on charges in a coalition of media organizations pressed for the release, I should say. So McBurney said that the introduction and conclusion of this report, as well as a section in which the grand jurors expressed concerns that some witnesses may have lied under oath, be released today. So the release is a significant development in a case that threatens legal jeopardy of former President Donald Trump as he ramps up his 2024 White House campaign. Now, this special grand jury spent about 7 months hearing testimony from witnesses, including high-profile Trump allies, such as Attorney Rudy Giuliani and Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, and high-ranking Georgia officials, such as Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger and Governor Brian Kemp. So again, a Georgia judge deciding to partially release reports when it comes to that special grand jury report on former President Donald Trump. The time is now 10:43. Live Now from Fox returns right after this.
Welcome back, everyone, here to Live Now from Fox, everyone. You can see the Dow is rocking this morning, up nearly 300 points in early trading, and we'll continue to look at it for you right here on Live Now from Fox. Hi, everyone. Mike Page here. Thank you so much for joining us here today, where we bring you top stories and headlines from all over the country. We will check in just a little bit to the Alex Murdaugh trial that continues day 16 going on right now. This is a live look with another witness on the stand. Some news that was made early in the day here for the trial, as we learned that 2 jurors were knocked off because, unfortunately, they came down with COVID-19. So the 2 alternates stepped in, and now the trial resumes. So we will get back to that in just a little bit here on Live Now from Fox, but I do want to go out to Arizona, where last night's Super Bowl wrapped up. Kansas City Chiefs won in a thrilling game that was close all the way until the very end. Kansas City Chiefs came back and won 38-35, and now head coach speaking on this, Andy Reid, right here on the Big Win and Super Bowl champions, Kansas City Chiefs.
I know Philly's hanging their head a little bit, but nobody really lost. I mean, it was 2 great teams playing each other and 2 great cities. So I'm fond of my time there, and I'm fond of my time that I've had in Kansas City. The people have been phenomenal. The organization that Clark Hunt's put together has been tremendous. The coaching staff, the players, you know, we've got Pat Mahomes over here that's going to talk to you. Phenomenal leadership in the front office with Mark Donovan, Brett Veach. So it's a good, solid organization, and with good, solid people. And I appreciate that. Having been kind of the elder statesman, I appreciate all that they do to keep me young. Anyways, that's time's yours. Are we opening this up to questions?
Yes, we are. We'll
Okay.
begin here in the front with Adam Kaiser, ESPN.
Right,
The microphone.
You answered the question last night about next season, but what about longer term? What's your, not holding you to it, but what's your longer term plan?
Yeah, you know what, Adam? I know I got asked that a lot, and I wasn't really expecting to, but I haven't put much thought into all that. You know, I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and I've got this guy over here that is a pretty good player. So I mean, we're doing okay.
Other questions? We have handheld mics. Raise your hand, please. Go over here in the middle. Name and outlet, please.
Hi, Andy. Sunny Upel from The Sun in the UK. Andy, you had 2 players yesterday who became fathers. Obviously, one's not here. Have you spoken to them at all, how they handled the emotion of the day?
Yeah, my sons, you're saying?
No. 2 players on the offense who became fathers yesterday.
Oh,
so Nick
yes.
in the morning.
No, I did. Yeah, fathers. Yes. Yes, I did talk to them. They're very happy, and congratulations to them and their girls there. Yeah.
Question in the back. Ruby.
Good morning, Coach. I'm going to stand up for you since you told me to stand up yesterday.
All right, Herbie.
How much transition, I mean, obviously you're going to transition to the business side of football here after you get back to Kansas City, but how much transition are you anticipating with your coaching staff, maybe Eric Bieniemy moving on?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Eric Bieniemy's been tremendous for us, and I think is tremendous for the National Football League, and I'm hoping he has an opportunity to go somewhere and you know, do his thing where he can run the show and be Eric Bieniemy. And then after that, I don't know. I mean, I don't know who is going to go. I always wish our guys the best of luck and opportunity. That's what all of them deserve. They work hard, and if they can get a promotion somewhere that I can't give them, more power to them.
We'll go with a couple more. Mitchell Brown.
Morning, Coach. Mitchell Brown, KCAA. First of all, congratulations on number 2.
Thank you.
Secondly, on the final drive last night, what went into the decision to play for the field goal as opposed to just punching it in?
Yeah, so we term that church mode, and Patrick relays that. We relay it to Patrick. Patrick relays it to the huddle. You you know, we knew they didn't have timeouts. We knew we could run the clock down to 8 seconds if we did it right, and still stay within that 5-6 yard area where your field goal percentages are 99%, and we've got a good field goal kicker. So, and then you don't really give them much of an opportunity to get the ball back. So we practice this. We practice it every Friday. You don't get to use it very often, but on the biggest stage, we're able to use that, yeah.
Okay, we have one more question. We'll go back to Adam from here at the end.
Andy, it seems like you enjoy the grind of your job, for better, for worse, more than you ever have. The X's and O's, the dealing with young men. Is that true? Do you feel that way, and why or why not?
Yeah, well, I do enjoy that part of it. That's the fun part of it. I enjoy having the coaches that I have that I can interact with on both sides of the ball, and but I spend more time with the offensive guys, and to be able to come up and create things with them, and they're as much of the creating process as I am. So the Joe Blaemeyers, I mean, the names go on, Greg Lewis, David Girardi, Corey Matei. I mean, these guys love getting in and going. And Tom Melvin, who's been with me since he was a player at San Francisco State, I mean, always comes up with one or two things, you know, a week. And so, and then the phenomenal job that Andy Heck does with the offensive line. And if I'm missing somebody, I mean, you know, it's a great group of young guys, and they're smart, and I enjoy being around them.
Okay, thank you, Coach.
Thank you.
Okay, to the Pete Rozelle Trophy winner, MVP, Patrick Mahomes, you know all the incredible accomplishments. Beyond the accomplishments on the field, he's one of those great young men that you're so proud of. The things he does off the field even exceed the amazing things he does on the field. He's joined an incredibly elite group. He is among a very small group of quarterbacks or players that have won the Super Bowl MVP multiple times. I think he's now in a very elite group with respect to winning the Super Bowl MVP and the MVP of the NFL in the same season. I believe all of the other winners of those two in the same season are all Hall of Famers, which tells you a little bit of where Patrick Mahomes is going. And he's only 27 years old. So we are just extraordinarily proud of him, and he deserves his trophy and deserves his Super Bowl championship. So Patrick, come on up. Got that? Not as heavy as it used.
Yeah, I just want to first off take it in this whole year and everything that's came with it, man. I just wanted to thank my teammates. It was a heck of a run. We started out in the OTAs in Dallas, Texas, then went to Kansas City, to St. Joe's, and then we ended up back here in AZ, man, winning the Super Bowl. And so I just want to thank my teammates, all the hard work they put in. My coaches, Coach Reed, and all the coaches that helped me be who I am, the Chiefs organization, and my family for supporting me every day. It's been an amazing run these last 5-6 years, and let's keep it rolling. So with that, it's y'all.
We have questions, handheld mics. Let's go front, Adam again.
Hey, Patrick, take us through what your offseason might look like because of the ankle. Are you going to be able to do a Texas thing again, or OTAs? You feel like you'll be ready to go? Take us through the offseason in that regard.
Yeah, I think I'll for sure be ready for OTAs and everything like that. Obviously, we'll have to continue the rehab, continue the treatment that we were doing, and just give it some rest. I mean, I think the best thing for it's going to be rest, and just try to make sure that when we get to OTAs, I'm ready to go. The only thing that might take a hit is my golf game, so I'll have to take a few weeks off of that.
We have a question in the middle.
Hey, Patrick, at what point did the ankle bother you the most? And was there a play that, afterwards you were saying, I don't know if I can go the next time?
The only time that it had the real, I don't even know what to say, the real hurt of the ankle was when I got tackled, it kind of rolled to the outside a little bit. And once you have that high ankle sprain, when any little tweak like that happens, it just really magnifies it. That was, coming into the game, I felt way better than I did in the Cincinnati game, and obviously that happens there, and luckily we were able to get in at halftime and get some new tape on there and some movement to try to get some mobility back. And then I think we talked about my offensive line. They protected me enough where I was able to sit in there and make the throws. So it was something that I was going to play through, but I'm glad I get a little bit of rest on it now.
Sam Farmer.
Patrick, Sam Farmer, LA Times. Can you walk us through the touchdowns to Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore, just that fake motion and what made that so effective?
Yeah, I think Coach Reed and Coach Bieniemy and all the offensive coaches, they had a good feel for how they passed off their motions. They're really good at passing off motions going across the field, and so we knew that since they didn't have that guy staying in man coverage on the guy that did motion, that we would have a chance of maybe getting a little outflank where we could get it to the guy in the end zone. And the first one, it was a great call. It wasn't even set up for that situation by Coach Reed and Coach Bieniemy, and calling in that situation to get the touchdown. And the second one, we actually messed up the formation a little bit, but we were able to still utilize the play, just to how the play worked. And I think y'all saw me look to the right first, then look back to the left because Sky was probably supposed to be on the other side, but he was able to do the motion and get in the end zone. And so at the end of the day, his first touchdown's going to be in the Super Bowl. So, that's going to be a memory he can have.
Center.
Mike Brodsky, Florida National News. Congratulations, Patrick. I know you have a lot of responsibilities in terms of appearances you're going to have to make, including a trip to Disneyland. What's the first thing you're going to do, though, once you get back home?
Yeah, once I get back home, I'm just going to spend that time with my family. I haven't got to even see my son yet because he was asleep by the time I got home yesterday. So spend that time with them and my daughter and enjoy it with them. And then it's going to be Parade Wednesday, and we'll enjoy it as a team, I'm sure. And I'm sure the Chiefs Kingdom will be out there. So I'm always excited to be there with them. It'll be a heck of a run, man. Drafts in Kansas City as well. And so we'll get to really enjoy this Super Bowl win.
We'll go two more. Carlton.
Yeah, so one of my favorite storylines through the whole Super Bowl here has been the two black quarterbacks and then two black fathers. So can you talk about the principles, the morals that your father instilled in you to help you get to this stage, and also what morals and principles you'd like to pass on to your kids?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing my dad instilled in me was to follow your dream. He said, no matter how it looks, follow your dream and work your tail off and have no regrets on how you work to get to that dream. And then I think second would just be a great man. It was those two things that he always talked to me about was how can you follow your dream to achieve that dream, and how can you be a great man while you do it. And so that was something that was instilled in me at a young age by my dad, and it's something that I want to instill in my daughter and my son is how can y'all be great people that make this earth a better place whenever y'all leave it.
Last question. Bring us home, Irving.
Hey, Patrick, congratulations on the MVP award and also winning the Super Bowl. Last night you mentioned that you were aware of some of the critics during the offseason about the Chiefs team. How often do you keep receipts, of that kind of stuff, like a Michael Jordan, and how much of that stuff pushes you?
Yeah, it's hard not to hear that stuff, especially in today's age and social media and everything like that. And so you hear how not good we're going to be, and all you can do is prove it on the football field. I'm not a guy that's going to respond and say stuff back to people or anything like that on social media. I'm just going to go out there and prove it on the football field, and once you do that, there's nothing they can really say. And so we had a new team, man. A lot of young players. Brett Veach did a great job of getting a lot of great players that contributed for us in this game, especially. And I said it before the year, and I'll always say, as long as Andy Reid's coaching us, we're always going to have a chance. So I'll keep the big guy around a couple more years at least, and we'll try to be back in this game as many times as possible.
Thank you, Patrick.
Super Bowl MVP there, Patrick Mahomes, a day after, not even a full day after the big Super Bowl win in Glendale, Arizona. You're watching Live Now from Fox, everyone. We're going to take our first break here of this hour. Stay right here with us on Live Now from Fox. Day 16 in the Alex Murdaugh double murder trial resumes in South Carolina. Let's listen right here on Live Now from Fox.
Because earlier, you did tests on the hem, right? The pheno tests on the front and back hem of the shirt. Is that correct?
I did.
But then the crime scene unit later came back and in the lab did a different kind of test.
That is correct.
And you don't know why?
I was not part of that decision. I was just notified that they would be performing that test while I was retrieving the additional stain that I had tested earlier.
And finally, it seems like if something is tested presumptive in the field and comes to you, you do a confirmatory test. Is that what happened with the Chevy Suburban?
Yes, that's correct.
But if something comes to you and there's not been a presumptive test, like with the shotguns, then you don't perform a confirmatory test?
No, I do the presumptive test.
Do you know why that's the policy?
It's an effort to not consume as much sample on a swab. A swab is it's like a sterile Q-tip, so essentially the surface area is very small. So in efforts to not consume the sample and to give more for DNA analysis, that's what's done.
If something goes to DNA analysis and there's some result, does it ever come back for a blood test to see if the source of the DNA was blood?
To be phen tested?
No, for hematrace test.
As I mentioned, hematrace testing can be requested on the back end, as any of our CAR tests can be.
In your experience, I think we had some testimony about your experience. If DNA is found on something, is there ever then a time that you go back and say, hey, was the source of this DNA blood, and do a hematrace test?
Hematrace specifically, to my knowledge, no. But in my experience, there have been times that solicitors or defense attorneys will request a CAR test be done on a sample after the DNA analysis has been performed.
No further questions.
Any redirect?
None from the state, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may step down. We'll be in recess for about 10 minutes or so.
All right, so they are taking a quick 10-minute break here on Live Now from Fox. We will take a quick 2-minute break, and then when we come back, we will take you out to Chicago, where early voting is happening right now ahead of the election on February 28th. That'll be the first round of the election, and then another one in April. We'll listen on the other side of the break as some big races, including the mayor and all 50 city council members as well. Welcome back, everyone, here to Live Now from Fox. Well, early voting is underway now in Chicago for some big races, including the mayor for the city of Chicago. There is going to be two elections, two rounds taking place, one on February 28th and the other on April 4th. Let's listen right now to officials ahead of the big voting days.
Districts or area, and youth turnout in non-presidential years does tend to trend lower. We did see a much lower youth turnout for these last midterm elections. However, what we do hope is driving some of this turnout is that we do have the most amount of people running in a municipal race in Chicago ever. We have nearly 300 candidates total. Now, a lot of those are due to the candidates running in the new police district council office, but there's a lot of wards that have quite a bit of candidates. All of these new police district candidates, there are 9 candidates for mayor. What we do know is that voters of Chicago right now, whether they're getting sick of it or not, are getting lots of touch bases by these campaigns. They are hopefully aware of Election Day that's upcoming, as well as knowing their different options for voting. I think part of what we're seeing right now for these brisk numbers for vote by mail and early voting is that voters are catching up with this new way of voting, I think, at this point. They're becoming more comfortable. And specifically, voters are becoming more comfortable with vote by mail voting than they've had over previous years. Now, over the last 2 elections that we had in 2022, we saw by the end of Election Day, about 25% of voters early vote, about 25% of voters vote by mail, and 50% of voters vote on Election Day, waiting for Election Day. Nothing looks out of the sort here that wouldn't seem that we would hit those numbers about that percentages again, although we might have a higher vote by mail turnout this time. But we are still expecting the majority of voters to turn up on Election Day. Given municipal races, people tend to make up their mind much later in the process already. You know, to the voters right now, 2 weeks is still a long time. I know to still kind of make up your mind or see where campaigns go. But if you have made up your mind, all early voting is open for you right now. Vote by mail is opening. And we've gotten a lot back more than we've had in previous elections so far.
Did you say you need 1,500 judges still?
We still do need 1,500 election judges. It's up to $230 for new judges. If you served in the November 8th election, it is up to $255. So right now we want 1,500 because we want to have a little bit of extra space for eventual judge resignations and no-shows on Election Day. Right now we have about 5,800 election judges. We need 6,450. So 1,500 would cover us a bit better. I know some of our friends around here were covering it over the weekend, but we just did a mass mailing. And I know we've been annoying some of Chicago's voters with the amount of mail or emails that we've been sending out, letting people know about their vote by mail options. But we did send some out to wards that had that don't have as much as we need right now. It's a longer list. I can happily share that, but right now we do have a little bit of a shortage. We're not worried yet. We still do have some time. We've got more applications coming in, but we would like to have at least 1,500 more judges to be fully safe for Election Day and get ahead of those resignations and no-shows.
Voters need to be the Chicago resident, but the judges can be suburb residents?
That's right. A judge can actually be a resident of Cook County. They don't have to be within the city of Chicago to serve as a poll worker in the city. And just as a clarification, this is just for election judges. We are set when it comes to our election coordinators. Similar poll worker duties, but we generally only need 1 per precinct. When it comes to election judges, we need 5 per precinct to consider it fully staffed. You know, we need a mix of both Democratic and Republican judges when it comes to that. And wherever we can, we want to overstaff. We want, you know, 6 or 7 election judges. What has been helpful, and which we do think will lead to, you know, some better voter services for Election Day, is that this election we have in-person training for election judges and poll workers back again. Over the last 3 election cycles, we've had only online training for voters. We've brought back the in-person training for voters, which is always helpful for election judges and poll workers to actually get their hands on the machines, to learn how to set them up, to ask their questions in person. So while we do need some election judges, we've got some fully trained ones coming up on February 28th. And again, I don't have the pen on me, but we have retired the use of Sharpies, so we're hopeful between that, you know, a singular ballot. All the ballots for most wards are going to be singular-sided this time because there's less races. You're not seeing the retention judges that you saw in November, and much fewer races. So we are hopeful that will cut down on polling place time on Election Day, and we'll see less lines there too. But part of why we want to get this message out for these 50 early voting sites is lines start to form as we get closer to Election Day, and lines start to form at our early voting sites too. I just remember last time the 44th Ward site at Murdaugh Library, the Sunday before, the last 2 days before Election Day, saw lines that went up to 2 to 3 hours. And we know, you know, as we get close to Election Day, it's been a milder winter for us, but we don't know what, you know, Election Day is going to bring for us. We might be in a blizzard, we might be sub-zero temperatures, we might be raining. And we know that that can be uncomfortable weather for people waiting, especially if lines get forced outside. So while we don't want to rush any voters, we do want to press upon them, if you, you know, make a plan to vote. But if you can give yourself time and vote a bit earlier, that's probably a good idea, because you're going to see a lot less lines than if you're waiting before the 5th, the 4th, the 3rd days before Election Day.
How many registered voters in Chicago?
Got that number right here. So as of today, We've got 582,277 current registered voters in Chicago. I say current because that number is flexible each day. We have people canceling their voter registration. We have same-day registration, which brings in a lot of new registrations to us day by day now, especially that we have the 50 ward sites with same-day registration. Those are technically counted as grace period votes, but basically it's same registration votes at early voting sites. But right now we've got over 1.5 million voters. So it's something that I've often liked to say in front of media, but while we'd always like to see more registered voters in Chicago, we have less of a registered voter problem in Chicago than a turnout problem in Chicago. So we've got 1.5 million, and for the last few municipal elections, we've only seen around 36% of those voters turn out. We'd like to bump that up into the 40s. Yeah, I think that's it. Other than, well, I'm sure we'll talk about it again closer to Election Day, but we did release new accessibility tiers for all of our polling places on Election Day. I can take more questions. This is something we are working on with the Department of Justice and our partners at Equip for Equality. But just to reiterate again, all early voting sites, our super site, and our board offices are completely ADA compliant and fully accessible to voters with disabilities.
The efforts of Chicago election boards to involve the immigrants in the different languages, what are the efforts that you have?
Well, I would love for you to talk more with our community services team that I know a lot are around here. And I'm going to invite Kimmy up to speak just a bit more if everyone is done with questions, though, too. But we have a really fabulous community services team that has been working day in, day out for nearly a year and a half at this point, because we've had 4 elections in a row. And very specifically, a lot more outreach within the South Asian community. We have full-time folks for Spanish, for South Asian community, for Polish, for Chinese, and we also have part-time folks for Korean and Tagalog. Our ballots, both paper and our touch screens, also have 5 additional languages: Gujarati, Urdu, Arabic, Russian, and Ukrainian. So if you are a voter that is looking to vote in a different language, do recommend our early voting sites because they're all touchscreen. Many of the early voting sites have bilingual early voting officials on hand to help out. And the touchscreen comes within all 12 of those languages we just discussed. Everyone good on my end? Kimmy, you want to step up for a sec?
Sure. Hello, I'm Kimiko Mehta. I actually am the representative of South Asian region, and I would be able to answer any questions related to the immigrants or Hindi or Urdu judges. We do need a lot of Hindi judges who can read Hindi because our ballots are also in Hindi now, and as well as in other languages, in Chinese and Polish. And we would want the immigrants to come forward and become election judges. So they can actually contact us, and the number for that would be 312-269-7990 for me, for Hindi and Urdu, or they could go to hindivote@chicagoelections.gov. As long as they belong to Cook County, they can come and become election judges. How do you spell your name? It's K-I-M-I-C-O, Kimiko, and the last name is Mehta, M-E-H.
You're watching Live Now from Fox again. That election will be February 28th, and today all 50 wards in Chicago have now the opportunity for early voting there ahead of the key race, including mayor of Chicago. You're watching Live Now from Fox, everyone. We are going to take another quick 2-minute break. Stay right here with us. More to come on Live Now. Welcome back, everyone, here to Live Now from Fox. I'm your host, Mike Page. Thanks again for joining us here today. Coming up at 1 p.m. Eastern, we will be taking you out in full to the White House briefing. That is where we are expected to hear from John Kirby again, all coming from the U.S. Air Force shooting down objects in the skies. There has been 4 shoot downs in the last 8 days. It's really been unprecedented in the time there of peacetime here in this country. So we will be bringing that to you at the White House coming up at 1 p.m. Eastern. In the meantime, I want to go out to Michigan, where Congresswoman Slotkin was talking about these shoot downs right here on Live Now from Fox.
Different objects that have been traversing North America. We had NORAD based out of Colorado Springs, which has the mission of protecting the United States, is paying extremely close attention now to anything that's flying in our skies. They've really lowered the threshold of what they're looking at, and this pinged on the radars early, about 24 hours ago. They determined that it wasn't a threat to national security. The NORAD commander has the ability to shoot down anything they want that's over the U.S. homeland if they deem it an immediate threat. We obviously watched it. You all watched it on open source media, but we watched it traverse from the Lake Michigan side to Lake Huron, and they chose to shoot it down over Lake Huron so that we could have a chance of collecting what it was. We do not know what it is right now. I've seen all kinds of speculation from another Chinese object to an academic who put up some sort of, sensing device. We don't know yet. That's why we like to collect things. As a former CIA officer, we like to exploit things that we find, and so that's the recovery effort that's going on right now in Lake Huron. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know that there's lots of talk about UFOs and all of that. Let's let our military do their job, collect the information. I have no reason to believe this is a UFO. And I noticed that the general's wording left open the door, so I know that's gotten all kinds of excitement. But the chances are this is just a normal run-of-the-mill thing that we and the intelligence community know how to exploit. That's what I expect to learn in the next couple of days.
Congresswoman, last night the NORAD commander, he described it that it was shot down 15 miles east of the UP in Lake Huron. Mm-hmm. That sounds like South Detroit to me because it's not exactly, that's land. Do you have a more approximate location for this shoot down? Have you been briefed by DOD on that?
No, I don't have anything more to add other than it was shot down over water, and Lake Huron has been choppy, so it's been difficult to recover. There's a joint U.S.-Canadian effort to make sure we keep eyes on that equipment and pick it up, but they're hampered by choppy water. So I don't know anything more about the exact GPS coordinates of the location, but they wanted to shoot it down over water. They shot it down over water, and they're trying to collect the gear.
Did you get briefed on where it floated over Michigan? Like, was it the entire UP? What was the path?
So this is actually, this is the interesting thing about having threats over our homeland. I'm sure our media in the back can tell you there were a lot of amateurs watching. There was a lot of folks online who could see the flight path. Certainly, the Wisconsin National Guard was mobilized and put up F-16s. The folks from the local base saw them go out. So there was a lot of unclassified information. The flight path is available through a simple Google. But I know that from our perspective, because it was coming from the Wisconsin side across Lake Michigan, that's when we got involved as Michiganders, and you can look the path up.
Once the object is recovered, can you explain the process in terms of going through it and learning more about its origin and role?
Yeah, well, it's similar to what we're seeing now with the Chinese balloon, right? We recovered the information, we take it to a facility, a classified facility, we start looking at everything from how it mobilized, what maybe surveillance packages are on it, just everything about it, the origin of some of the equipment on there. You've heard that story breaking, so that's a normal process of exploitation, and I'm sure we're going to do the exact same thing with these objects that we've more recently shot down. Yeah, so you saw the Chinese government today, I think, still on the defensive and flailing about when it comes to reacting to the fact that a Chinese-produced balloon traversed our homeland, and they made false accusations that we have balloons all over China. The National Security Council has already come out dismissing that and saying this is just a Chinese government reaction to be caught, frankly. So I have no reason to question when the White House puts out a statement that we have no balloons over China. Now 3 different objects that have been traversing North America. We had NORAD based out of Colorado Springs, which has the mission of protecting the United States, is paying extremely close attention now to anything that's flying in our skies. They've really lowered the threshold of what they're looking at, and this pinged on the radars early, about 24 hours ago. They determined that it wasn't a threat to national security. The NORAD.
And that was Representative Slotkin talking about the U.S. Shooting down those objects, especially the one that happened in her area near Michigan. Of course, we got you covered right here on Live Now from Fox. As always, once again, there will be a White House briefing coming up at 1 p.m. Eastern. Of course, a lot of questions will be on this matter. We'll bring it to you right here on Live Now from Fox, everybody. We are going to take another quick 2-minute break. Stay right here with us. More to come right here.
Using all those different instruments and procedures and interpretation, I had to successfully complete several written exams, an oral exam, complete several mock cases and a mock court, and then was competency tested with another case before finally being able to do a mock case, before finally being able to do analysis on real casework.
You will need to speak into the mic and increase your volume in order for us to hear you better.
Okay.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Agent Zapata, how many cases have you, do you think you've participated in?
Approximately 500.
And have you testified in trial before?
Yes, I have.
How many times?
19.
And in those trials, were you qualified as an expert witness?
Yes, I was.
And what were you qualified as an expert witness in?
In DNA analysis.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would move to qualify Agent Zapata as an expert in DNA analysis.
She's so qualified.
All All right, you had mentioned in some of the duties of your job, kind of what you do. I guess if we could kind of scale it back a little bit more basic, but briefly, just what is DNA?
DNA is a chemical that is found throughout your body with the exception of red blood cells. You get half of your DNA from your mom and half from your dad, and it's unique to individuals with the exception of identical twins.
And so if we have a case where there are family members involved, what does that mean as far as DNA analysis?
Based upon the evidence DNA profile, sometimes it might not be possible to make comparisons to some family members because there may not be enough DNA present there to distinguish between the family members. Because the family members will share DNA, that will affect what the DNA profile looks like.
Can you tell us about some different sources of DNA from a person's body?
Some sources from your body would be your hair, blood, semen, saliva, bones, as well as DNA from your skin cells, which is what we call touch DNA.
And what are some variables that can affect touch DNA?
So some people just naturally shed more skin cells throughout the day than other people, and so you would expect to recover more DNA from an object that a person who sheds a lot of DNA has handled than a person who sheds less. There are also factors such as the surface that is being touched. If the surface is rough, then you would leave more skin cells behind. If you are holding the item for a longer period of time or with a lot of pressure, then you would expect to leave more skin cells behind. Environmental factors such as rain, moisture, UV, light, that can all lessen the amount of DNA that is recovered. And also personal hygiene habits can affect how much DNA you leave behind. So if you've just washed your hands, there may not be as much skin cells left behind.
So do you leave touch DNA behind kind of like you would leave fingerprints behind? Is that a fair comparison?
Kind of. If you touch it, you touch an object, you may leave some behind.
All right, now you mentioned different sources such as body fluids. Are you able to confirm like 100% which body fluid a DNA profile comes from?
So the test that we perform to try to identify a body fluid is different from the DNA testing that is being performed. Especially in cases where the evidence profile is a mixture, there's no way for us to tell, did all of this DNA come from blood? Did it come from saliva and blood mixed together? There's no way for us to identify 100% the source of the DNA profile. We can indicate that a body fluid may be present, but we cannot say the blood on this item is from this individual.
So if I had a drop of blood on my shirt up here, could you ever say this was my blood?
I could test it for the
All right, everybody, we do want to go out to some live aerials that we are just getting into our newsroom here. Police on the scene right now in Brooklyn here, where they say a driver in a U-Haul truck slammed into people, including a police officer. We don't know the amount of those injured. We are hearing reports there that the driver has been arrested, but details very limited right now. But as you can see, Sky Fox high up in the air in Brooklyn right now, New York there, as this investigation continues. And once we get some more updates on the status there of people that were injured and just how many, we'll bring it to you right here on Live Now from Fox, everyone.
evidence profile and attempt to break it down into the potential contributors to that profile. So if you think about the evidence profile as like grandma's chocolate chip cookies, you know exactly what that cookie is supposed to taste like. You know what the final product is supposed to be, and you're trying to recreate that recipe and get it as close to grandma's cookie as what you know it's supposed to be. So you're testing different ingredients at different proportions to see what can make up that cookie. And that is kind of what StarMix does when it's looking at the profile. And then I will evaluate the StarMix output, make sure that what StarMix is telling me makes sense based upon what the profile looks like. And then if everything worked properly, I can use StarMix also to calculate our statistics.
Okay, and how do you calculate that statistic?
So the statistic that StarMix calculates is called a likelihood ratio. It's a comparison of two possible scenarios to see which is a better explanation of the DNA profile that was developed. It works kind of like a seesaw. So if you have one scenario on one side and another scenario on the other side, and StarMix is going to put more weight on the scenario that is a better explanation of the DNA profile. You do these kinds of comparisons subconsciously in your mind all day long. If the DNA profile, for example, is the fact that someone ran a marathon, that's your result. The two scenarios that could explain that result are, one, the person trained every day for months leading up to the marathon. They ran many, many miles. The second scenario is that they sat on the couch and watched TV and never ran at all. Which one is a more likely explanation of the fact that they finished the marathon? It would be the first one, that they trained really hard. And so that is the kind of comparison that StarMix is making.
And where do these scenarios come from, I guess?
So based upon what the DNA profile looks like, we will set up the two opposing scenarios to make the comparison. And the first scenario is always going to include the person whose standard is being compared to that profile, so the person whose statistic you are calculating. And the second scenario is always going to include an unidentified, unrelated individual, because you need something that opposes that comparison. So for a single source profile, your two scenarios will be the person being compared is contributing to the mixture versus an unidentified, unrelated individual is contributing to the mixture. To the profile for single source. If it is a mixture, then you need to account for the other potential individuals present in that profile. So for a two-person mixture, for example, the first scenario will be the person being compared and an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed to the mixture versus two unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture. And so we'll make that same comparison for each person based upon what the DNA profile looks like.
Okay. And so this unidentified, unrelated individual, where does that really come from?
That's just the way that the statistic is calculated. It's not saying that it's not possible for related individuals to be in the mixture, but because we are focusing only on the comparison to that one person, we need something to contrast that to, and we account for that by using that unidentified, unrelated individual wording.
So is that just kind of built into this formula in the StarMix program?
Correct.
All right. So what are some results that you can obtain from your comparisons you make?
So a result in support of the first scenario, which is that the person being compared to the profile is contributing to the profile, the seesaw will tilt in that direction, and we call that an inclusion. If it is tilting far enough in the other direction, we call that an exclusion. It's saying that the person being compared is not a contributor to the profile under those two scenarios that are being compared. It's possible for the seesaw to just tilt a little bit in either direction if the DNA in the profile is very low level or very partial. There's just not that much information there to make the comparison, and so it's not tilting in one way or the other very strongly. It is also possible, if it's very partial, very low level information, for the seesaw to just not move at all. It's saying that neither explanation is a better explanation for the DNA profile, and we'll call that uninformative.
Okay. And do you set up propositions the same way for each comparison to an item?
Yes, so first we will say if the item is suitable for comparison, then we will say the number of contributors that we're interpreting that profile as, and then we will set up those two scenarios each time. In the cases of items that are being taken off of someone's body or swabs from their body, we'll call that an intimate item. And so we want to account for the presence of the individual whose body the item was taken off of in that profile. Because it's being removed from their body, we're expecting that profile to be there. And so we can do that in two ways. We'll look at the DNA profile. If their DNA is clearly present in the profile, we will assume them as a contributor. And what that does is put that person on both sides of the seesaw. And so we're only making comparisons now to the DNA that is not that person who we already know is there. It's like someone telling you, I know there are 2 cups of flour in Grandma's cookie recipe. So now you're just adjusting the other potential ingredients to see what else is making up that recipe. If their DNA profile is maybe more partial or low level, then we'll run the statistic for that individual first to make sure that.
All right, everybody, I do want to go back out now to Brooklyn here. This is where we continue to follow that breaking news that we just updated you moments ago of a driver in a U-Haul truck slamming into people, including a police officer. A suspect has been arrested. You can see from Sky Fox visuals right now that tons of police presence right now at the scene. And of course, we will continue to follow it for you every step of the way right here on Live Now from Fox. That is exactly what we do. As soon as we get some feeds coming into our station, as well as breaking news, we try to bring it to you all live, raw, and unfiltered as they come in, just like this. And in just a little bit, we will be taking some portion of Fox 5 New York's noon show as soon as they provide updates. So we'll get some more local updates there from Fox 5 New York in just moments there. But this is what we continue to see right now of multiple people struck. We just don't have a number on the amount of. We were learning that this all happened from a police pursuit that happened, and then it could be also multiple scenes here that the police are detailing with right now. We're also learning some new reporting here that bomb squad has been called to the scene just to for protective measures. They just want to check out the U-Haul truck to make sure that there are no explosives in it right now. So that is what we are seeing right now with this truck that is centered in right here with the Sky Fox visuals right now. So we will continue to stay on this as long as we have the shot right here of this breaking news situation happening right now in Brooklyn, New York. We could see several blocks blocked off right now because of this police investigation right now. And you can see at the center of your screen right here, bomb squad officials that are at the scene as they are wanting to make sure that this U-Haul truck that the suspect was in doesn't have any explosives or other harmful material that could be deadly to those in the area right now. And they are going to pan in just a little bit to the U-Haul in question, as well as a police vehicle that was very close to it as well. And for just joining us here on Live Now from Fox, we do know that several people have been injured. We just do not know the exact amount. A suspect did try to flee the scene, but was later arrested. And of course, an ongoing investigation will be happening. but we just wanted to continue to update you throughout the visuals that we are seeing. Remember, this is live, raw, and always unfiltered. Viewer discretion is advised here as bomb squad technicians get closer to the U-Haul here, and you can see just the amount of police presence that we are seeing right now, as this is an active investigation happening all right now in Brooklyn, as this breaking news happened within the last hour right now. And Fox 5 New York is going on in just moments for their noon show, and as soon as they hit this coverage, we'll go to that and bring it to you live right here. But you can see the technicians now getting closer to the U-Haul, as it's going to be on this sidewalk that we are going to see. You can see the police vehicle there that looked there like the police vehicle was pinning that U-Haul truck to the sidewalk there, and that is maybe when the officer was injured right there. So right now we are seeing this active investigation play out right for us right here on Live Now from Fox, everyone, as viewer discretion is always heavily advised during these tense moments right now. But you can see that they are actively checking the truck now. They want to make sure that it's not rigged with any explosives or maybe other harmful materials such as substances right now, as this U-Haul was in a brief pursuit that police were following, and then unfortunately people were injured here as a result here of this chase that all unfolded in the early afternoon of New York right now. So we are following this for you all right here on Live Now from Fox, live, raw, and unfiltered. As you can see, the bomb squad technicians, there are several of them right now looking under. And we are going to go out to Fox 5 coverage right now. They are just beginning their 12 o'clock show.
Pedestrians were struck in Brooklyn near Bay Ridge Parkway and 5th Avenue. Vehicle involved apparently went by a police vehicle that attempted to stop it. A police pursuit continued throughout Brooklyn, ultimately ending at this location, Columbia Street near Hamilton Avenue. There we could see this truck up on the sidewalk. Police officers now walking around the truck, investigating it, along with a K-9 unit. You can see that one police car in front of the truck that blocked it off. Earlier, there were many other police vehicles that had surrounded the vehicle. We believe at least one person is in custody. Again, this is a situation that began just before 11 o'clock this morning. Early reports are that multiple pedestrians were struck near Bay Ridge Parkway and 5th Avenue. Now, at this time, it's unclear how many people were injured, if there were injuries involved, how many people may have been struck by that vehicle. And again, police now concluding that pursuit. They believe this is the vehicle that was involved, ultimately ending at this location, Hamilton Avenue and Columbia Street. And there we can see police officers with the K-9 unit investigating the truck. At this time, there are no immediate indications that there is anything potentially dangerous with the vehicle. This would most likely be a normal course of their investigation to check the vehicle out. Several of the streets in the area have now been blocked off for this end of the investigation. Again, this is Columbia Street near Hamilton Avenue.
Jim, thank you very much. Now, this incident happening the same day as the death penalty phase begins in the trial of Sayfullo Saipov. Now, he was convicted of murder and attempted murder.
All right, so that was the coverage there off the top there for Fox 5. We are now back out live in full right here as police continue to check out this U-Haul, as several people were injured. We don't have the exact number, but of course we will keep an eye on this here for you right here on Live Now from Fox. And if we have any police statements on the ground after this investigation wraps up, we will bring it to you right here, always on Live Now from Fox. Thanks so much for joining us here today as we bring you top stories, headlines, all in the mix right here on Live Now. I'm your host, Mike Page. Always great to be here with you. One of the big events that we are going to be following today is coming out of the White House. White House briefing is slated for 1 p.m. Eastern. We will be bringing that to you. This all coming on the heels there of U.S. jets shooting down 4 objects in 8 days. It has really been a busy time for the Department of Defense and the Pentagon, and also a lot of questions coming on Friday from the White House, if you remember that. So we will bring it to you live, raw, and unfiltered right here coming up at 1 p.m. Eastern. We'll play it out for you in full, so it'll be like you are in the briefing room with everyone else, as they are going to be fielding a lot of questions on this matter right here on Live Now from Fox. We have another live feed coming to us from Houston, where civil rights attorney Ben Crump is holding this news conference as he is calling on the Department of Justice to investigate Harris County Jail. This all coming in from 2022 alone. At least 28 inmates lost their lives in custody of Harris County Jail. Let's listen right here on Live Now from Fox.
We are going to get to the answers of it. We are not going to continue to let these detainees, who are disproportionately black and brown detainees, be killed at the very hands of the people who swore oath to protect and serve them and give them their constitutional right to due process. The guards can't be the judge, the jury, and the executioner. I know Warren Randall, who's also here, lost his son, is going to talk about the brutality of black people being detained by law enforcement officials, whether they're in the jail or they're out the jail. It seems to be this pattern and practice of brutality that's happening with the Harris County Sheriff's Department. And so we have to get to the bottom of it. We can't have 2 families dead in 1 month in 1 jail. Unacceptable. We can't have people who have contusions and abrasions on their body, but yet they say we can't explain the death. Well, if you look at your video, you can explain the death. You don't need to say no more, just release the video. At this time, Attorney Paul Grinke, who's a great lawyer here in the state of Texas, who is working with us on trying to bring all of these families forward to justice. Because at some point, and Ms. Smith, I don't know where Kevin's daughter is at, but at some point, and you all can come up, at some point, she's gonna ask, what happened to my daddy? And her grandmother and grandfather are gonna have to give her an answer. And we want the answer to be the truth, and that he did not die in vain. Because if it happens again after today, then shame on all of us. Not just shame on the Sheriff's Department, but shame on all of us if we continue. I mean, it's only February and already 4 this year. It was 28 last year. What is going on in Houston? And so we're going to get to the bottom of it, because she deserves the answers, and we're going to help you answer these questions, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. At this time, you're going to hear from Attorney Paul Grinke.
Thank you. Good morning. I'll be brief. The law says that if a person is a detainee who has been convicted of nothing yet, they are innocent, that any treatment that they receive inside the jail that may be considered punishment is unconstitutional. These families have lost their loved ones whose civil rights to life and liberty were violated. We believe we will prove in the courthouse that both the conditions of confinement have led to these detainees' deaths, and both the actions of the correctional officers and authorities have led to their deaths right under the sheriff's nose, And if it happens long enough, it's with the sheriff's acquiescence. We have credible reason to believe that Jacoby Pillow died from compression asphyxia, from being restrained, similar to George Floyd.
My Lord.
We have also credible reason to believe that there will be evidence that he was beaten multiple times by correctional officers. We also have credible reason to believe that Kevin Smith was beaten while he was detained.
My Lord.
Okay? We believe that this is a pervasive pattern and culture of death inside this jail. Mr. Crump, we have seen, has been in Memphis. He's been in San Antonio. There are other jurisdictions where we believe that the authorities and the mayors are starting to get it right. Be transparent.
Yeah.
Show us the video. Come talk to the families. Invite them into your office and tell us what happened. Here, again and again, the Harris County Jail and the sheriff and the county have hidden behind the word investigation.
Tell it.
We're investigating. We can't tell you anything yet. Well, we're investigating too. And these families are sitting here looking for answers. So I call upon transparency, and I'm honored to work with Mr. Crump here and on behalf of these beautiful families.
Thank you, Paul. I mean, you can't just keep beating us to death and don't expect us to stand up and say no more. And so I know we're working with a lot of the civil rights organizations here in Houston, Texas. We're going to continue to demand transparency. That's the very least you can give these families. I mean, why can't you show them the video, show the community the video, so if there were mistakes made, we can try to correct them to prevent it from happening in the future. We don't need to say no more, just show the video. Don't 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 say no more, just show the video. And that's what we want, transparency. I mean, we want to know what happened to Kevin Smith. We want to know what happened to Gary Smith. We want to know what happened to Christian Smith. We want to know what happened to Jacoby Pillow. We have the right to know. Harris County, we have the right to know. And so at this time, you're going to hear from the families, and obviously this is very emotional for them. They didn't sign up for this, but they have said they're going to fight to get justice for their families. So they're going to do the best they can. First, you're going to hear from the family of Jacoby Pillow. You have his sisters, Octavia Wagner, and you have Ari Pillow, who are going to address you. And the other family members, if y'all want to come and stand with me.
My name is Octavia Wagner. I am Jacoby's oldest sister, and I will always be here to fight for Jacoby, to demand answers. We believe Jacoby was murdered here in Harris County Jail. And no one should receive a phone call, no one telling them that their loved one is deceased and no answers, giving me an email to tell me to follow the email and the links to get answers. It's been 7 weeks and we have not been notified or told anything. We demand answers. We demand change, not only justice, but change here in Harris County, not just for Jacoby Pillow, but for all these families, every single person that has lost their life here in Harris County from neglect, from abuse. We need to stop. We need to be holding these people accountable for what they're doing to these black men and black women of all color. It's time for a change. I'm not only mad and upset at Harris County, I'm mad at Ed Gonzalez, the sheriff, at Mayor Turner, at the state of Texas, Houston, Texas Department of Criminal Justice. They have all failed every single person that has died here. We demand answers and change.
Thank you so much.
It's okay. I'm Ariana Pillow. I'm the younger sister of my brother Jacoby Pillow, who was murdered here in Harris County Jail. In being a former employee in Harris County, working for pretrial, I've literally witnessed correctional staff mistreat detainees because they were in need of insulin for diabetes or other medical issues, and I've literally witnessed them be the reason for altercation taking place between them and detainees, and it's not fair and it's not right, because our brother and nobody deserves to go through what we're going through. We haven't gotten any answers from Harris County, but like my sister said, a link for us to follow. Nobody has reached out. Nobody has gave their condolences from the county. Nobody has given us anything, and it's not fair and it's not right. And with this taking place, we just want change. We'll never get our brother back. Nobody here will ever get their loved one back, but it doesn't deserve to keep on happening. And I wouldn't wish this pain on anybody.
It's traumatic. It's traumatic.
Thank you so much, Ari. And I thank you so much, Octavia. She is right. We don't want just to get justice for the families. We want change so it doesn't happen to anybody else. Obviously, these deaths are preventable. If you had, and Attorney Green, you correct me, in 2021 it was 22 deaths. In 2022 it was 28 deaths. And now in 2023 we on record to break that number from last year with 4 deaths, 3 of them occurring in January. And so you do the math. 32 deaths in since 2022, 14 months. And then you add another 22 deaths the year before that. I mean, you have over 50 families who lost their loved ones. Houston, we have a problem. We have a serious problem. And so now you're going to hear from Miss Deborah Smith, the mother of Christian Smith, a mother of 4, who, again, like Jacoby, you scratching your head saying, why is she in prison? She was trying to protect her children from a group that was trying to beat her up. And that's what she was doing. She ended up in prison. I'm sorry, end up in jail. And then she ends up dead. So Miss Deborah Smith is going to talk about her beautiful daughter, Kristen Smith. And Tiffany, yeah. Here, you want to hold this for Tiffany?
Good morning. I'm here on behalf of my daughter, Kristen Nicole Smith, and my 4 grandchildren. The youngest is 7 years old. Tell me, put yourself in my spot. How do I explain that she's never, ever coming back to a 7-year-old? Harris County Jail, you need a lot of changes. If you cannot keep them alive or take care of them, release them or shut down. I'm calling for them to be shut down. Another entity come in and take over. I don't know what the protocol is. If you cannot keep them alive and you can't keep them safe, I need every official there removed and replaced. When you talk to people that have been transferred to TDC, they speak of, they tell their families how much happier they're there. Harris County Jail, y'all doing something wrong. Don't worry about me, moms and dads and family, because it's clean here. We're being fed real food. Nobody is harassed.
Some of you will be seeing a quick 2-minute break here on Live Now from Fox. Stay right here with us. More coverage coming up next.
You need help. Why is it that my daughter, that has to be, anybody that's familiar with diabetes, your glucose has to be checked periodically, before eating, after eating, that you couldn't even get her the basic of her treatment, the insulin. It's no way when she arrived at the hospital, my understanding that her glucose numbers were 20. She was gone. I know fixing dilated. She was only moved there for purposes. She was gone. 20, no. Broke 6 ribs. That's excessive. You knew she was gone. She was gone.
My Lord.
So what I'm seeking now is, I need answers. Her children are not ready for answers right now, but when they're ready, I want to have answers when they're ready to talk about what happened to their mom, trying to save them from a gang of children jumping on her daughter.
My Lord. Thank you so much, Deborah, and we're going to help to get you those answers. At this time, we will hear from the parents of Kevin Smith Jr. and the family of Gary Smith, who both died in the custody of Harris County Jail within 3 weeks of each other. This family had to have 2 funerals because of the malfeasance of the Harris County Sheriff's Office. It's so unfair. 2 family members in less than a month dead at the hands of the Harris County Jail officials. So you will hear from Kevin Smith Sr. and Miss Tracy Woodson Smith. Miss Tracy, you can bring it.
Hello everyone, my name is Tracy Woodson Smith. I'm the mother of Kevin Leon Smith Jr.
Can you say that again so they can hear you?
Hi, my name is Tracy Woodson Smith. I'm the mother of Kevin Leon Smith Jr. My son was incarcerated at Harris County with no health issues. I had to receive a call from the inside of a friend that knew him, reached out to their mother to contact me on social media to find out that my son was deceased. Later, I'm started calling Harris County. No one is answering the phones. So finally, I had called my son's lawyer. He called up here and got a call back with me within 5 minutes saying the allegations are true. Your son is deceased. No one called to tell me he was deceased. No one called and told me he was transported to Bentorb Hospital. From word that I know of, my son was already gone. He was just laying in a bunk. So I want foot camera. I want to know who was the guards working. I want to know who was watching the switchboard. Kevin was in an open cell with more inmates. I want to know what went on with my son. Only call I got was at 1:40 stating, I'm sorry for your loss. You could come pick up his property.
My Lord.
But y'all couldn't call to tell me he was transported. Supposedly you saying he had an asthma attack. I'm the birth mother.
Right.
When I called up here, they say my son was transported to TDC. You cannot transfer a body that haven't been charged with a case, for one. Then when I kept asking, oh, we cannot speak with you because you're not the next of kin. I'm his mother, so I'm the next of kin. An officer put me on hold, transferred the phone finally hung up. When I called back, oh, we cannot speak with you, Mom. You have to prove that you the mother. Yeah. Then y'all told me my son was already transported to forensic off OST. Called OST, they never had my son's body.
My Lord.
I got in touch with a funeral home. The lady from the funeral home helped me. She called up there and they stated I had to sign a form to release his body. When I released his body, the lady said, well, I have his body. I went up to the funeral home to look at my baby being deceased. The footages that I have is not an asthma attack. And I want answers and I want justice. I will not stop until I rock everything. Everybody in Harris County, I feel that you understaffed, but if you're understaffed, why house the inmates in there?
Amen.
My son was shipped to Gales Darby unit where I was able to see him on a tablet. The words came out of here, Mom, I hate I'm locked up, but I'm living good. I can see y'all, I can see my daughter. I'm eating good. We ain't got to worry about not getting our hygienists. We ain't got to worry about sleeping on floors. We ain't got to worry about the establishments up in here. Half the stuff that he was calling saying was going on in Harris County, I was trying to get my son home quick. The day I talked to him was January the 30th. The last call was at 9:42 before the phones hung up. Then I get a call on social media January the 31st at 11 a.m. stating my son was deceased. I need answers. And it's sad.
It is very sad. Mr. Smith, do you want to say a word?
I know what you have, my brother.
On behalf of your brother and your son, your whole family.
How y'all doing? My name is Kevin Smith Sr. I'm the father of Kevin Smith. Gary Wayne Smith was my big brother. My son called and he said, Pops, I just seen Uncle Gary passing by. He spoke to me. An hour after my son hung up with me, we got a call saying my brother was dead. Said my brother died of a seizures. My brother didn't have seizures.
My Lord.
He didn't have seizures. But they say he died of it. That's what he died from.
My Lord.
Kevin loved music. He was a line dance teacher. He was a Zydeco. Deepwood Riders. You know, they're gonna always keep that name strong. We're gonna keep that going on. Deepwood Riders gonna stand forever. As long as I got breath in my body, I'm gonna make sure he ride, and I need some justice for my son and my brother. We just need this done. Harris County, y'all need some help. We need some help, man.
Thank you so much, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. And the final people you will hear from is a family that has been standing up for justice for others since they lost their son, Warren Randall and Tiffany, Rochelle, and they lost their son, Jalen Randall. They'll briefly address you while they're here, and then we'll try to take some of your questions. Mr. Warren Randall, Ms. Tiffany Rochelle.
Good morning. I'm here in solidarity with these families because in Houston we have a real problem. This is the fourth largest city in America. We're more worried, the politicians and the policing agencies are more worried about March Madness and the Final Four, but it's been a madness already inflicted on our people and our communities forever. The politicians, the policing agencies sweep everything under the rug, but now it's time for total transparency for all these activities and things that are happening. This can't continue to happen in this city. We're composed of too many entities, too many things are happening that are just being swept under the rug. And so we want to bring notoriety and attention to the things that are happening. Whether you're unarmed, whether you've been apprehended or whether you're already apprehended, it seems like young black men and men of color are at risk of not coming out alive. Whether they're arresting you or whether you're already incarcerated within the Harris County system, it seems to be a big problem. And no one wants to address this. The politicians, the agencies which are supposed to support and have our backs are the ones that are killing us. And so right now, everybody needs to be held accountable. All these smiles and handshaking and kissing baby this time, that's over with. The constituents of this city need your help, and you're supposed to be here to support them. This is what we voted you in office for, and this is what you're supposed to do, protect and serve us.
Tell them more.
Thank you.
Tiffany, do you want to say a word?
My name is Tiffany Rochelle. I'm the mother of Jalen Randall. All I have to say at this point, do something. Do something quick, do something now. We can't continue to go through this, and we're gonna fight. We're not going nowhere, so you will see our face all the time, and we're gonna support every family that we possibly can in Houston, Texas, whatever it takes. We're gonna be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. Thank you so much, Warren, and we continue to pray for justice for Jalen Randall as well. At this time, we're going to take a few of your questions if you have any. Attorney Grinke and I will try to answer the bulk of them, but if there's a question that a family member can answer, we will try to have them answer. Are there any questions?
Can you talk about your efforts you and the family have done so far to try to get that video evidence from the jail, and also have any conversations with Sheriff Gonzalez himself?
Well, I know we sent letters of representation and requests for discovery to be preserved. I'll let Attorney Grinke talk about that. I know in our letter to the Department of Justice, we're asking them to start their own investigation. We don't want them to use the Texas Rangers investigation. We want their own investigation. We want them to get the videos themselves and make sure they can analyze the video. Attorney Grinke?
Mr. Crump is right. Yeah, we on all of these cases, we immediately write to the Sheriff's Department and to the county, to Harris County, and ask for any and all evidence. We ask that it be preserved. We ask them to share it with the family if they don't want to give it to us right away, pending an investigation. Invite the families in and let them see it. Talk to them so that they're not in the dark. In every one of these cases here in Harris County, we have hit a brick wall. They send a request to the Attorney General, asking the Attorney General to find that they do not have to share this information with us while there's a pending government investigation. Other jurisdictions around the state have done exactly that, brought the families in at least, and let the family know what's going on. That is not happening here.
And I know Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lear is going to try to meet with the families, and hopefully the sheriff will feel compelled to address these families. I know from everybody doing a survey here, nobody has talked to the sheriff directly. They've all talked to the chaplain, and that's been it. To say your loved one has died in our custody. And then what they keep telling everybody, as Ms. Smith said, both Ms. Smiths, they keep saying it's an investigation. Like Attorney Grinke said, investigation is ongoing, but that doesn't mean you can't release these videos. And I mean, you got families who've been waiting now for almost a year, since the beginning of 2022, with no answers whatsoever. And the fact that they have charged a deputy, we believe, is a signal that there's more brutality that has happened. Where there's smoke, there's fire. And there's a fire going on in Harris County Jail with all of these people dying in your custody. Any other questions?
Sure. I just wanted to ask, I feel like every time we speak to these elected officials, they tell us that it's a systemic problem. They say, you know, the DA's office is involved and there's overcrowding at the jail, and that's why this is happening. Kind of, how do you respond to that? Do you want the whole system sort of removed and started over? What do you see? Where does the responsibility here lie?
Well, I think these families said it best. If you can't keep our family members alive, shut it down. If that was your daughter or your son or your spouse, and they went in on a charge of a crime, nobody's convicted, and they're thinking, well, we'll go in, we will get our due process, we'll have our day in court to show we're innocent, but in the meantime, you're beat to death? I mean, if that was your loved one, you would say, no, shut this down until you can guarantee us that my loved one isn't going to die at the hands of the people who's supposed to protect them. And so these politicians can't keep hiding behind words like it's systemic, that we have an investigation going on. No, as Tiffany and these families expressed, you need to do something now. I love how Octavia said, we don't just want justice for our family, we want change. We want change so this doesn't have to happen to anybody else. And it's disproportionately black and brown people. You know, you have to ask, is that the reason it's not being taken so seriously?
What about autopsies? Have you guys gotten any autopsy reports back, and what's that process been like to get the cause of death?
No, right now we're doing independent.
Well, again, that's exactly one of the problems. We've asked for autopsy results in every one of these cases, and they won't share it with the families. There's a pending investigation. They can't even give the families that one piece of information that might help them process this.
I want to applaud District Attorney Kim Ogg having the conviction to charge the guard with manslaughter. It is our hope that her office will look at each and every one of these cases and take it to the grand jury and bring charges with the video evidence. If you got ocular proof, just like we talked about in Tyree Nichols, Arthur, you know, once you got proof that the police engaged in excessive force of a citizen, that they committed a crime, it shouldn't take, 6 6 months, a year, 2-year investigation. Because we did see when it was those black officers in Memphis, Tennessee, in less than 20 days, they were terminated, arrested, and charged. And so that's the blueprint now. That is the blueprint. So they can't tell us this investigation is going to take, a year. When you got video, if this was any one of their family members and you had video of them killing somebody, do you think it would take them a long investigation? So why do we change the rules when it's law enforcement? You got the video. I got to believe every part of that jail got video covering it. Get it to Kim Ogg's office. Let's go ahead. And I think it bears repeating. As the chief of police in Memphis said, once they saw the video, it was important for the community to see that swift action was being taken, that they were being swiftly brought to justice. Well, as we said, whether it's black officers or white officers, the community needs to see that it's swift action being taken, that they're being brought swiftly to justice, not just when it's black officers, when it's white, when it's any officer. It's important to our community to see swift action. One last question, if you have.
When you say you want to shut the jail down, does that mean having it taken over by another agency, or having charges dismissed, or what does change look like?
Well, change looks like the powers that be saying to the sheriff, the county commission, hey, if we cannot keep the citizens safe, then we need to make plans to have somebody else come run the jail. It's that simple. We gotta keep citizens safe. These are citizens. I know they have been charged with a crime, but last time I read the United States Constitution, it said innocent until proven guilty. We will keep you updated. Hopefully when they have the meeting with the Congresswoman, we will be able to report back to you all that an investigation has been opened by the Department of Justice on the federal level. Attorney Grinke and I will come as we get results of some of these independent autopsies that we will share with you. And we say to any and all other families who have died in custody at the Harris County Sheriff's Department, please contact us, please come forward. As a family member said, why haven't others come forward? A lot of times when you are a marginalized person of color, you start to lose hope. You say, why come forward? Nobody seems to care. Well, we do care, and we believe that there are power in numbers. Come and join Deborah Smith, the mother of Christian Smith. Come and join Tracy Woodson Smith.
This was live there in Houston, Texas. This is all coming after families demand action from the Department of Justice. This all coming as 27 inmates died in custody in 2022. 4 have died so far in 2023, and we heard from some family members right there. We got you covered right here on Live Now from Fox, everyone. We are going to take a quick 2-minute break. We continue to follow the breaking news out of Brooklyn. Live look right now. They're on the ground And we'll continue to follow it there as a U-Haul truck driver slammed into several people. We'll bring it to you all right here on Live Now. Welcome back, everyone, here to Live Now from Fox. We are covering the breaking news out of Brooklyn, New York, where several people are injured after a U-Haul truck driver slammed into them on a sidewalk. There are several scenes throughout Brooklyn right now, and we are awaiting a news conference from police. This is a roving shot right there. So this is live, raw, and unfiltered there as we are waiting for some sort of update from New York City police officials. Another live look right here for you of the ground of the U-Haul truck in question there. The suspect has been arrested. We're still waiting to hear the total number of victims that have taken to area hospitals. We'll continue to follow it for you right here on Live Now from Fox. In the meantime, I'm going to go back out live to the Alex Murdaugh trial that continues day 16.
Item 19.7, a cutting from stain D.
For item 19.7, the DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 4 individuals. Richard Alexander Murdaugh is contributing to the mixture, so I was able to assume him. And so the comparison in this case will be Richard Alexander Murdaugh, the person being compared to the mixture, and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh and 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture. For the comparison to Margaret Murdaugh, the DNA profile is approximately 1.9 quadrillion times more likely if Richard Alexander Murdaugh, Margaret Murdaugh, and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if Richard Alexander Murdaugh and 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture. I also made a comparison to Nolan Tootin. The DNA profile is approximately 480 septillion times more likely if Richard Alexander Murdaugh, Nolan Tootin, and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if Richard Alexander Murdaugh and 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
And again, why was Nolan Tootin included in this comparison?
When looking at the evidence DNA profile, I was not able to visually exclude Nolan Tootin as a potential contributor to the mixture, and so I ran his likelihood ratio for comparison to that item. And then similarly to the other items where if an individual is included when you run their likelihood ratio on their own, I also had to do the calculation for all of those individuals together to make sure that the DNA profile can be explained by a contribution of all of those individuals. So for that comparison, the DNA profile is approximately 450 duodecillion times more likely if Richard Alexander Murdaugh, Margaret Murdaugh, Nolan Tootin, and an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed to the mixture than if Richard Alexander Murdaugh and 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
Okay, item 19.8, cutting from another stain on the shirt, stain E. Just give us any individuals that were included in your results, please.
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 3 individuals. Richard Alexander Murdaugh is contributing to the mixture. For the comparison to Margaret Murdaugh, the result is the DNA profile is approximately 590 million times more likely if Richard Alexander Murdaugh, Margaret Murdaugh, and an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed to the mixture than if Richard Alexander Murdaugh and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
19.9, stain F.
For item 19.9, a DNA profile was developed. Due to the inability to determine the number of contributors, no further interpretation will be offered.
Item 19.10.
For item 19.10, the DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 3 individuals. Richard Alexander Murdaugh is contributing to the mixture. For the comparison to Margaret Murdaugh, the DNA profile is approximately 430 octillion times more likely if Richard Alexander Murdaugh, Margaret Murdaugh, and an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed to the mixture than if Richard Alexander Murdaugh and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
Item 19.11, which is a cutting from stain H. You could explain any individuals who are included in your analysis.
So for item 19.11, the only individual who had an inclusionary likelihood ratio, well, first the DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 2 individuals. Richard Alexander Murdaugh is contributing to the mixture. For the comparison to Hipólito Torres, the DNA profile is approximately 10 times more likely if Richard Alexander Murdaugh and Hipólito Torres contributed to the mixture than if Richard Alexander Murdaugh and an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed to the mixture.
So, with Mr. Torres, I guess if we could look back at this chart and tell us where he would fall along there.
The likelihood ratio for his comparison under those propositions was 10, which falls under our weak support for that first scenario.
So would that be trending towards exclusion?
It's on, it's in support of that first scenario on this side, the green side of the scale.
On the green side?
But it's 10. So that very first arrow indicates weak support for that scenario. The range is 2 to 99.
Okay.
And his likelihood ratio, when compared to the DNA profile, the DNA profile is approximately 10 times more likely if Richard Alexander Murdaugh and Hipólito Torres contributed to the mixture than if Richard Alexander Murdaugh and an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed to the mixture.
And I don't want you to repeat